Everyone, old school Pokemon here, back again with a podcast episode number 44, joined by my usual co-host, Catch 'em All Collectibles, Dan. And tonight we have a very special guest joining us. We've got Peekdatchu on for our live stream. How are you doing tonight, Peek?
I'm doing great, man. I appreciate you guys having me on. I've been looking forward to this for a few weeks now, so happy to be here. How's it going, chat? How's everybody tonight?
We
Doing
appreciate
good.
you coming on very much. I'm doing well myself. People can check out the bottom corner. As you can see, we have 989 subscribers. We're gonna try to do the final push while we're hanging out tonight. Try to hit that 1,000. So keep an eye on that throughout the night. Hopefully we can hit 1,000 before we hit like 980.
Congrats, by the way, guys. This is exciting. I so hope we hit it tonight. That's gonna be awesome.
It'll be quite the milestone. We'll be able to start making that sweet ad revenue.
But yeah,
Hey, you gotta start with
most
those
of you,
nickels before you get those hundreds.
yeah, most of you probably know Colt, Peekdatchu, but if you want to give a little spiel about yourself, let people know who may not know.
Yeah, guys. So I'm Peekdatchu. I'm the Nigel Thornberry Pikachu that you might have seen like randomly on Instagram and like other places. I have a YouTube channel which Dan will link as soon as this stream is over. He's going to put it in the description. He failed miserably today. Didn't put it in there. No, I'm just giving him a hard time. No, I have a YouTube channel. I have a basically an interview series called Collector Showcase. I did a whole season 1, which is all in a playlist. You guys can go check that out. Actually, both Nick and Dan have both been on there. A lot of really good interviews and stuff like that, and I pepper in some occasional like PSA returns and really I'd say PSA returns are really about it for the most part, just because that's something I like to open with the community. But yeah, just been in the hobby here for I don't know, going on maybe 4 years, maybe a little longer than that now. I'm not even sure at this point, but love to collect, love old school vintage cards primarily, but have dabbled a little bit in modern recently. Even with the subject that we will not name, recently have gotten into that. And then, yeah, do some Dragon Ball content as well. Not really talking too much into that or diving too much away from Pokemon, but I do buy that. I do collect that. I really enjoy the arts and stuff. So, yeah, just really excited to, find, again, another way to engage with the community. That's kind of what pulled me into all this. And I'm on one of my favorite podcasts. So this is awesome. But overall, that's pretty much me. There's, if you guys want to find me, obviously type in the name, look for a Nigel Thornberry Pikachu, and I'm around. So
I did link it in the chat if anyone wants to go over there quickly, drop your sub, maybe drop a couple likes on a couple of his videos and add them to your watch later. But yeah, yeah, I will get that added to the description later on too. We do have a handful of questions that we're going to go through first, but as we always do with these live podcast, we're going to do like a live Q&A. Feel free to leave your questions, build up a little backlog in the chat as we go through the questions from last episode. I don't know if we have anything else to cover, Nick. Obviously, we have our guest this week. 2 weeks from now, it's just going to be us again, live on a Thursday. I don't think there was anything else to cover up front.
No, I think we're good to go.
Nick's amazing backdrop. Can we touch on that first? I mean, look.
Yeah,
stacking back there, it's great.
Nick with the new lighting, nice big new ring light.
Oh yeah,
installed.
that's one thing I could mention. I'm back in whatever we're recording in, 720, 1080, whatever. It's looking good now.
Did we click the button tonight?
we should be coming to you in 720p. Maybe someday 1080p, but maybe a few more years.
I love it.
But yeah, with that, we'll get into the questions from last week, or last 2 weeks ago. We had a question from Brandon Baker. Question for next episode. What are your thoughts on Skull Kid? Obviously, that was...
you go ahead and take this one first. I love it.
I think that... I did play some of the Zelda games when I was younger, so it's cool to me, but I think I have the biggest Skull Kid fanboy down below me on your screen, so I'll let him take it away.
Yeah, Skull Kid, greatest non-trophy card of all time. No, no, that's for anyone who doesn't know. I also have Zelda cards that I collect and buy and sell and things like that. And I loved Majora's Mask as a kid, and Skull Kid is like that art is like so amazing and iconic. And Dan definitely has heard me for probably hours like shill this, but no, it's a beautiful card. It's an old Legend of Zelda CCG from way back in the day. Has actually picked up a ton of steam. I mean, it's actually interesting to see how many people actually just find out about it and go, wow, I really want to own one of these. So Skull Kid is my all-time favorite card from the set that I collect. But if you guys want to see it, it's on my I think it's on my Instagram. If not, it's definitely on my YouTube channel. But that's kind of a dig at Dan because he loves hearing me talk about Skull Kid and show that constantly. So great question, Brandon. I love how we start the stream off with that. It's awesome.
Starting it off strong.
Absolutely.
And I just linked I linked Peekdatchu's Instagram in the chat as well if you want to go follow him there. They will be added to the description afterwards though.
If it means anything, guys, I'm 5 away from 700 followers, so that would be awesome. I'm almost catching up to the PokeFlipz YouTube, but that's pretty cool. I just noticed that today, actually. I was like, wow, there's 700 people almost who actually care about what I post. This is amazing. So, yeah, if you guys want to jump in there, I do chat with a lot of people on there, so.
And my thing for this question, I would have no idea what that is if I didn't watch your YouTube videos and hear you talk about it.
I'm glad I could bless you with the greatest card knowledge of all time, though, because very lucky to know about that card. It's just it's maxed out all stats for sure. Level 99 all day.
We had a few meme questions to start. So Stuart asks us, do your moms call you Daniel and Nicholas when you're being naughty? My default when I was younger, I started taking the meme questions because I didn't think we had so many. And then I grabbed a few meme questions and realized we actually had like 9 questions total. So these are the ones that I normally skip. But I was always first name, middle name. That's like the default, I think. Angry, stern mom or dad to their kids. So I was always first name, middle name when I was getting in trouble.
Dan Ketchum, get over here.
Dan Ketchum, get over here. Yeah.
I like it. Yeah, I was always Nicholas.
Sorry, I'm just imagining someone yelling Nicholas at you, and it's cracking me up.
It didn't happen often. I was an angel of a child.
And then we had Kai wondering how you could enjoy smooth peanut butter. He genuinely doesn't get it. Here's 3 things that are better with texture: Braille, black and white full arts, and peanut butter.
Yeah. That was one of the few questions I read because I think he put it in pretty early. Great question.
Yeah.
Great question.
Yeah, that's a solid one. So I had to throw that in there. But I think we've gotten to our first actual legitimate question. Now that we got a little bit more viewership up, hopefully we didn't lose too many with those 3 questions. But Ancient Mew came through and asked, would you rather them start doing gold stars again or keep alternate arts? I think it's a pretty fitting question, just kind of like the fact that we're going back to some of those lowercase EX, apparently, with some of the spoilers that we've seen for Scarlet and Violet. I think alternate arts. I think we got the Gold Star Greninja throwback, one of my honestly favorite cards, kind of as a meme, but kind of I really genuinely like it. I think the alternate art thing is really cool though, and we don't need to. It's weird. Like it would fit because we are going back to the lowercase EX. But I think using the whole card is a cooler concept, and I'd rather they just stick with the alternate arts personally.
Yeah, I'm gonna be in agreement with that. I think that gold stars, I don't want to say they just had their time, but I mean they really had their time. I mean it's like I'd rather them be forward thinking in something new versus just kind of grabbing the low hanging fruit and going back to what people used to collect back in the day. Because again, people are just going to end up comparing it to other gold stars, like the vintage ones. So it's like, I like what they're doing with alt arts. I think it's a very cool idea. And I think a lot of other like CCGs, TCGs are doing that. So it's In essence, it's sort of the same thing. It's like another chase, but I'd rather it be a different chase than the same thing that we had, X amount of years ago. So I think it keeps it refreshing, and I think they've done a really good job with it. I mean, I've seen them saying that the trainer gallery is going away, and people are actually like, wow, I really wish they would have kept this, and they're excited for whatever the new thing to replace that is. So I think it just shows organic interest, versus just kind of trying to retroactively go back and capture that same nostalgia, because you're just not, or not nostalgia, but interest, but you're not going to do that. It's never going to be the same. So knowing that, just keep pushing the future, keep doing new things. Some are going to flop, obviously. Rainbow rares, I'm never a fan of. I don't think anybody cares about those anymore. So it's like, yeah, keep alt arts coming. I really, really enjoy kind of what they're doing with that, even as someone who's primarily vintage and not modern. I like the idea of alternative arts, and like you said, taking up the full card is like amazing. So I'm really into that. So I'm in agreement with it.
Yeah, I would pretty much agree with you guys. I think it's important that Pokemon keeps things fresh, just like you were saying, and doesn't just kind of ride their coattails of what's been successful in the past. So I'm glad they kind of got rid of not alt arts, gold stars, and moved on into alt arts. It would be interesting to see if they did bring gold stars back, how popular they would actually be nowadays compared to like the original gold stars that were in the EX era. Would kids, because obviously modern product is meant for kids, would kids enjoy gold stars? It's really just a holographic card with a little gold star. I think the alt arts are more appealing to kids. But that would be interesting to see what would happen if they did bring gold stars back. Would they be as popular today, or are the alt arts better off?
My thought too on that is what's the longevity of it if you do release gold stars again? Because it's one of the things, alt arts seem to have had just a very organic, crazy growth, over the course of the last like few sets. So it's like, if you go back to gold stars, is that just like a one and done? And then, prices just skyrocket, people go crazy, and then they just get dumped because it has the name gold star in it. I would much rather see organic interest in a TCG of some sort of rare card that they're chasing than just buying it for a callback, because it's almost like the Pokemon company saying, hey, these are really rare, versus there's alt arts out now that are not like, I mean, maybe they're rare, but they're not like crazy expensive or anything. But gold stars, I feel like people would just jump on the name versus the actual card and how organically interested they are in that, if that makes sense. So that's why I think alt arts, yeah, even longevity, which I think is what is on Pokemon's mind. They're not trying to just, hope this set goes well, and when it does or doesn't, then we're going to do something. No, they're like 5 steps ahead, when it comes to that. So yeah, I think longevity wise, alt arts are definitely the way to go. And I think they're doing a pretty good job with those right now.
Oh, I had the question scrolling, I just realized. But Jack Baldwin had a question.
I'm just laughing at Shiz's. I think it's cool to see 2 PokeTubers and Nick on the live tonight. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, Nick's a full-time podcaster now, so you can't really give him too much crap.
Yes, you get to see me once every 2 weeks.
He leaves you wanting more. So that's the plus. Sorry, Dan.
No problem.
Just read that randomly.
Jack Baldwin had a question. Do you feel like the magic of collecting has been lost by being constantly involved in the business of Pokemon? We take a break from this and other podcasts for... Oh, I've taken a break from this and other podcasts for a good while because all that seemed to be discussed was the monetary value of the hobby. Do you have favorite artists? Arita doesn't count. I love looking through bulk cards to find artists I like and collecting off that. I guess if you want to start, Nick, because I've been starting them all.
So first part of the question about collections losing interest because of the business side. Honestly, a little bit, yes. When I was, so like 2016, 2017 is when I first started collecting. I was selling at the time too, but it was more of a part-time thing. And I was spending a lot more time going through my collection, buying stuff for my collection, organizing it, creating spreadsheets, updating pricing, all of that fun stuff. Now that I've gone full-time with Pokemon, and this is kind of my primary source of income now, I spend a lot less time with my personal collection. Don't look at it nearly as much. I still buy things here and there for it, but it's definitely taken more of a backseat to the business end, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, because I do really enjoy the business end. So it's not like I'm sacrificing my collection for a job. It's more so just I kind of consider like the stuff in my business inventory part of my collection, like a short-term collection. So it is cool to see all these different cards pass through your hands and get to deal with cards every single day. But it's not like stuff like in my personal collection. So it is a little bit different, and I definitely do spend less time with my personal collection than I used to. And then the second part about having a favorite artist, I really don't have a favorite artist. I have favorite artworks. Shining Gyarados, obviously, we've talked about that one before. But even with modern cards, like Silver Tempest, the Jinx and Silver Tempest. It's an uncommon card, doesn't have any value whatsoever, but the artwork on that card is super good. Absolutely love that card. Same thing with the Magmar in Chilling Reign. I believe it's Chilling Reign anyway. It's like those colored pencil artworks. I really like those cards a lot. Love the artwork on them. So I don't necessarily have a favorite artist, but I do have like cards that I really like for the artwork. How about you, Peek?
So Dan, do me a favor, because I was very intently listening to that. Give me the first half of that question one last time. I know about the artist and favorite that, but the first half of that.
Yeah, do you feel like the magic of collecting has been lost by being constantly involved in the business of Pokemon?
Okay. And then I think he said he stepped away from some of the podcasts because it was a lot of like monetization, like things like, or not monetization. Yeah. Almost. We're not there yet. We're almost there for the sub count, but no, just more for the business side of things. So I'm gonna say no. To an extent, I think there's just been more people involved in the business that are more on social media. That's part of the business strategy. YouTube links to Instagram, links to eBay, or whatever combination you want. It all goes back to website, eBay. It's driving traffic from your socials to things that you are selling. So I feel like the magic of collecting is not necessarily lost. I just think it's sort of buried under the amount of market discussion and financial and monetary discussion. And realistically, that's always going to be a little bit of the hobby. Like even if you try to avoid it, you're still going to get a little bit of it because in essence, that speaks to how much collector demand there is for an item to a certain extent. It's not always just people buying and flipping. And there's also like organic demand where people will spend a lot of money on a card. So you can definitely find a lot more collecting centric content. Like DJ Gigabyte is a guy I will shout out nonstop. The guy is so criminally underrated when it comes to like his sub count and things like that. But he's one of those guys who just puts out stuff that you've never even heard of, TCGs you've never thought were even a thing. And he just collects. I mean, granted, does he buy and sell? Absolutely. But I believe out of anybody I've probably watched, he supplements his collecting goals and his collecting wants more than just, for monetary gain and just keeping, money for that reason. So I think it's out there, that's one of the things I tried to do a little bit with like Collector Showcase is kind of steer a little bit more away from like market talk and hearing, hey, what do you think the financials are going to be in Q4 of Pokemon cardboard? Like, it doesn't always have to be that way. I know there's a lot of content out there and props to you for recognizing that you wanted to take a break, because I've definitely been there. And that's something that I think is important for a lot of people because you can get wrapped up so much in the literal day to day of ingesting that you really get burned out and you think that's all that's out there. But realistically, there's a lot more out there. There's a lot of really genuine collectors who enjoy. They're just not, as common on socials, if that makes any sense. I would say Instagram, there's actually a lot of really, really cool collectors out in there. You just have to find them. So I would say I don't think the magic of collecting is gone. I think it's just been overwhelmed with a lot of people attracted by the monetary gain and then hopefully in the optimistic sense, like enjoying collecting the stuff as well. But I can completely understand like taking a break and feeling like that's everything that's out there. But I can tell you from someone who follows, a lot of people who are actually like subjectively true collectors, like there is really collecting content out there. And if you end up going to like more niche TCGs or people who dabble in multitude of things, like that's always helpful as well, because you can go in and see that they're not just in Pokemon and trying to talk about the price of what a booster box is now. So it's out there. You just have to find it. It's kind of a treasure hunt, unfortunately, but that's, 2020 happens. Everybody sees zeros and commas. They're going to jump in. That's what you're going to hear about. As far as favorite artist, not necessarily. I think it's Amino, I think is maybe the last name. Whoever did the Not Awake or the Not Awake Pikachu from 2001, the birthday Pikachu, whoever did that art, like I've seen a few of their arts. That's one of the only artists I've ever actually like looked up and really enjoyed the Pokemon they drew. But I'm a big fan of like kind of that cartoony 2D style. Like I love realistic Pokemon, especially like Aquapolis, Skyward. Like they just look badass, like for the most part. But like I love the idea of like the cartoony, very childlike like art that's out there. And I remember, I think it's a Mono. I butcher me in the comments if that's the case, but or if that's not the case. But that's one of the ones I can think of off the top of my head. But I don't really do a lot of Illustrator collections for the most part. It's like Nick said, like just art that I really enjoy and certain Pokemon and certain cards, for the most part.
Yeah, I guess I'll start with the art one. I know like Fukuda did all the gold stars. The gold stars are all really cool. I think Sugimori, I think it was last episode actually, we talked about the Shining Gyarados, which we frequently talk about. And I had one on my desk at the time. I don't think it's still here. But I did a short today on a couple of my favorite arts in the hobby. And one was the Shining Gyarados and the other was the Burn Tower. So other than that, I don't really have like... Yeah, I know there's some Saito big fans, Himeno, I think you were referencing, Arita, Fukuda. Like I know a lot of the names. I know some of the more key arts out there who drew them, but like I don't get really deep into the whole commons and uncommons, collecting a binder of just like every card illustrated by one given artist. I think it's cool that people do that. I just... Pivoting into the next part of the question with that, part of it is like I definitely feel that I don't have time. I feel like my time is not best spent pursuing my collection further. Actually, a good backdrop that I've had behind me for a couple weeks now, but I started back into the hobby in 2014, very much collector focused. One thing though that goes hand in hand though, and however much people don't like it, money is a huge part, even if you have no intent to ever sell. And the way that I got into the hobby initially was I did intend to sell. I did intend to flip and sell to fund my collection, but I took $5,000 and I wanted to build the biggest collection I possibly could. I wanted to open every box. I wanted to have every chase card in PSA 9. And the most efficient way for me to do that was to be very mindful of the dollars because they were limited. Time and dollars were limited. So I wanted to stretch them as far as possible. And me being a numbers guy, like that's the optimization side of that, the spreadsheet side of that. I actually enjoy that thoroughly. So I've been doing that since the start. So 2014 through 2019, I never took a penny out of the hobby. It was all just growing and growing and growing bigger and bigger. Since 2020, I've talked about it many, many times. Kind of a bittersweet thing. I made a lot of money, but I sold a ton of my collection. Another interesting timing part of it, in 2017, I finished my goal of opening one of every box. I think it was 2017. In 2019, somewhere around 2019, I actually finished my goal of having like most PSA 9 chase cards, level X's, gold stars, old school EXs, legends, all WotC first edition holos. Pretty much everything I set out to do. And the journey was awesome and it was all fun. But like once I achieved it all, so part of it is spoiled a little bit, having turned a lot more business side in 2020, but I think a lot of it would have been anyways. Because like once you do what you set out to do initially, it's like, okay, you just summited at Everest, you just planted your flag, you took up a couple pictures, whatever you do. And yeah, I mean, I turned towards Japanese and I'm doing some other things that like I added to my goals list, but like the next several cards on my to-do list are Miracle Diamonds and Wonder Platinums and Pika Rings and Mew Orbs. Like even if I like, again, the dollars and the cents matter very much if I ever want to own those. Now that I'm a business, it's more plausible that I might have the ability to own them. Nick touched on it heavily. I was going to bring that up too. Even though like I may not own those in my collection ever, I may not just lock them away, die with them in 50 years. Just having them pass through my hands, even if I can have them pass through my hands in a consignment, that would be really, really cool. I still appreciate it. I love connecting buyer and seller. So many times I've had like, hey, I'm gonna buy my first car with this. Hey, I'm gonna like fund my wedding with this. Or on the buyer side of like, hey, this was the last card I needed. Check out my collection. Here's my Instagram post. They tag me in it. So even though I can't necessarily do all the collector things, there's other parts of enjoyment that I get out of it. And then just the whole spreadsheets and numbers thing, like optimizing, growing my business day after day, year after year. I'm enjoying it in different ways. Yeah, that's kind of my long-winded thoughts on the whole subject.
Who was it that asked that question again?
Jack Baldwin.
Yeah. Jack Baldwin. Another way to think about that is, Nick called it a temporary short-term collection. Really, and this has just been my experience for myself as well as I'm sure people that I follow, but doing a business and buying selling is a vehicle in order to achieve those collection goals. Because realistically, Dan's talking about the cards that like he would actually want, and from what I've run into is starting with, you can start with the easy low hanging fruit. Oh, I want this card. Oh, I want this card. We're talking a couple $100, things like that. But you eventually get to the point, in my opinion, not everyone, but generally from what I've seen, you want rarer and more rare items. So with that rarity, usually will come a lot higher cost that people just don't have liquid cash to do that. Or there's not, their traditional W-2 jobs are not going to pay for that. So there has to be a way for you to be able to do that. And I think a very healthy way to do that is to engage in the hobby, in buying and selling, building relationships with people, and then eventually being able to achieve those goals. So that is something that there's two ways to really look at people buying and selling. You can look at people to say, hey, they're making a quick buck. And like, Dan said, he didn't even take a dollar out of the hobby. And I think he said 2019, but a lot of people aren't just taking money out of this hobby and then running with it and going and spending it on, cars, houses, things like that. Some people are, sure. But from my experience, at least the people that I engage with, they're usually doing that in order to further collections or acquire more inventory and be able to have those Mount Everest of cards that they want. For me specifically, really my permanent PC is probably like 5 cards max. I'm not one of those people who wants to go in and collect, to catch them all, I guess, to throw Dan's name out there. And I think that's something to help you kind of think about is when you look at, what people collect. There's some people who want to collect a ton of cards or a full master set and things like that. And then there's people like myself who want, 3 to 5 cards total. And granted, they're very expensive cards. So it's like, how do you get there? And so you can still engage and healthily engage and build relationships and still appreciate the hobby, but also make money in order to achieve those goals. So, yeah, I just wanted to add that on kind of toward the end.
Next question comes in from Athletes and Antiquities. With prices of EX era through Black and White era slowly rising, I would think that more and more of these cards would get graded, but the PSA pop reports seem to be fairly flat in the 9 to 10 range. Why do you think this is? Are there just that few mint condition cards available due to poor quality out of packs? Or do you think we will see... It gets cut off slightly.
Stupid sub count.
Just leave it dot dot.
Or do you think we will see a wave hit PSA? So for a long period of Pokemon's life, I mean Pokemon's been around 25 plus years now. Print quality was pretty rough. Right now you look at cards like the Moonbreon and they have these 80% PSA 10 rates, and all the boxes behind me, I've opened literally a box of every set in the hobby, base set, first edition, English aside. Most of them were like 9s out of pack. A lot of them were like 8s out of pack. 10s were never really the majority throughout the entire history. So partly it's that. Another part of it is just like the age of those. Or like while they were modern, PSA grading Pokemon cards was a thing. but not nearly as ubiquitous as it was. 10 years from now, 20 years from now, you will look back at Evolving Skies. You will look back at even the Sun and Moon era, the XY era. Each successive era, more and more, has grading become a thing. And right now, you're having a situation where several thousand of every chase card is just immediately being chucked out to PSA, packed to sleeve to card saver onto PSA. That was not a thing during the EX era. Not even with the Gold Stars. That was not a thing during the Black and White era. It first started being a thing very minimally during like the XY era. A lot of evolution stuff was graded out of the gate. A decent bit of flash fire, but like decent bit being nowhere near what it is today. So yeah, a lot of it's just age attrition, the fact that they were never worth grading. No one was really doing it. And I think the pops will increase substantially. What does substantially mean exactly in numbers? It's hard to say, but like, I don't know off the top of my head. I don't track pops like super, super close, but whatever ratio the 9 to 10 is right now, I would think that the 9s will outpace the growth proportionally to the 10s, because you'll just have like I recently bought that massive binder collection. Those were all pack pulled back then, but still being handled in the binders. Some amount of them got dinged, some amount of them got dust in there, scratched going into the page, out of the page, whatever. So yeah, they're going to go up. How much? It's hard to say, I guess is my answer.
Yeah, I would say, so it's a combination of things. You know, in the last couple of years, PSA has been, first off, closed. Also, one of the most expensive companies to grade with. So like if you look at pop reports and PSA, that's one part of the market. And CGC, I think, has taken a lot of that business for them. So, you know, keeping in mind the fact that there's another company that a lot of people are grading with is a big thing to keep in mind when it comes to those PSA pop reports, because PSA pop reports are not indicative of every card that's out there that's being graded. You know, there's a lot of other companies who are still grading those. Now, when it comes to will they increase or will they stay the same or whatever it is, I think, you know, obviously having multiple grading companies is a factor, but in addition to that, I think that there's people, I think the buyer pool for a lot of that has shifted, you know, and there's been a lot of conversation about this that I've had on my channel, I've had privately, and you know, you guys have talked about as well, is that there's a lot of people interested in modern right now. There's a lot of people realizing that there is a ton of opportunity in that, and finding mint copies of those takes time. I mean, it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of cost. So a lot of the people who usually buy and grade cards tend to buy and sell. And it's all about looking at where the opportunity is. You know, it's time value is really what it comes back to. So sure, are there going to be people who are really hunting those and really finding them? Absolutely. But on the scale of, you know, as Dan mentioned, a new chase card that has thousands graded in, you know, a few months, like it's, I think the attention is not necessarily on those as much, only because there's a lot more financially incentivized plays, I guess, to go with newer cards than that. So I think that I agree with Dan on the fact that I think that they will increase, but I think it's going to be at a lot slower, steady growth. I can't remember who it was that mentioned this, but it was like vintage is like the mutual funds of the hobby, and you know, modern is like, you know, the stocks, the GameStop, you know, and stuff like that, or the crypto of it, because it's like there's so much more quick money involved in it. So I think until we get to a situation where, which I don't know if we really will or not, kind of going back to I think it was Jack Baldwin's question. I don't know how long it's going to take for quote unquote a ton of money and a ton of people involved in strictly the monetary gain in the hobby to get out. But I think that's what it would take probably for those type of pop reports on PSA's end to actually increase like dramatically and quickly. I don't see it happening personally. I think they'll, again, have steady growth. The last part of it is just like Dan said, the quality. If anything was meant, it's been graded by now, in my opinion. Like, you're going to have to find people that have had, like, you know, mom's basement just sitting in binders, like ready to go, or there's people who are just binder collectors who finally decide to cash out. That's what I think it would take for something like that to increase a ton, because I just don't think that there's as much demand. Well, I won't say there's not as much demand. There's not as much interest to be that person to do the legwork, to go find them and do it. So versus other avenues in the hobby. That's what I would say.
Yeah. We talked about this on, I think it was one of Jake's streams that me and you were in, Dan, a little while back. And whenever, so like when we were originally talking about the PSA backlog, when they had that massive 12, 13 million card backlog, we were talking on PokeFlipz, and talking about how the pop reports of those types of cards, those kind of the mid-era cards, were going to dramatically increase. Because before that time period, those cards really weren't worth anything. Nobody was collecting them, nobody was grading them, nobody was buying them. So it really wasn't worth to grade those cards. But then people started gaining more interest in those cards, started collecting them more, pricing went up more, and the pop reports on those cards really haven't done much of anything. They've increased slightly, but not nearly as much as what I was expecting. I thought pop reports on those were going to go skyrocketing, and they really didn't. So I think, to me now, it's safer to say that those cards, that era, really did have a much smaller print run than WotC, Modern, anything in between. So I do think over time that pop report is going to continue to increase. We still have WotC 10s being added into the pop report, so the pop report is definitely going to increase across the board on everything. But I do believe that these cards are kind of underlooked a little bit. And that there aren't as many mint copies out there as I originally thought. So, yeah, basically, I think the pop report is going to slowly increase, but I don't think we are going to see like a dramatic increase in the pop report on these types of cards.
One other thing too is grading scales change over time, and the market adapts to that. So, what would have been a PSA 10 in the 2 cert era, very different than now. And not to get into the cert argument, and 4s are great, now 5s are great, now 6 are great, whatever it is. But that's another thing just to keep in mind is I think the grading consumer is a lot smarter in that a lot more people know what the grading scale is and know what to send to what company. So I think that does impact it as well, because a lot of the volume submissions are coming from people who know those scales. So that's something that, do I see a small dent? It's going to CGC. Do I think that it's absolutely perfect? I'm going to take a game with BGS. And, also too, with the pop reports being, low or not increasing, even the increase could just be resubmissions. You never know. So that's something that it's hard to judge the organic demand off of pop reports. I know for certain things, like you can definitely see it, but it's just there's just so many factors involved, when it comes to that, of why it's not increasing. But the pop report doesn't necessarily dictate who wants it. It just may be a case where, people are just grading with PSA. They're grading with other companies and have been for the last 2 years until just recently. We're seeing 18, we're seeing 15. So I'd be interested to see in the next year how much of an increase we get now, or I guess in a year from now, versus the last 2 years. It may substantially go up. We just don't know.
Yeah. You want to take that next question, Nick?
Yeah. John, which I'll pass this one right over to Peak. The 2004 Tropical Wind semifinalist PSA 9 just sold for $48,000 on eBay and was only on eBay for 1 day. Thoughts? To me, personally, Peak, block your ears. That sounds absolutely absurd. I know these cards are popular and gaining popularity, and there is rarity behind it, but for me personally, I don't understand it. You're paying an absolute substantial premium for a gold stamp that says semifinalist. Personally, I think the staff version is fine. Even the non-stamped version is all right. If I were collecting these cards, I would just go for the staff version. You get the same exact card with a gold stamp, and you're paying a fraction of the price. But what are your thoughts, Peak? I'm sure you can. You have a different opinion there.
I did cover my ears there for a second. The non-stamped version. How dare you? No, I think that the semifinalists, I think it was a PSA 9, if I'm not mistaken. 48,000 seems I kind of go two ways on it. It seems a bit much for a PSA 9. Like a gem mint copy of something like that, absolutely. I could see 50K. Like that just makes sense to me. Because at the end of the day, like these are trophies. Like in semi-finalists, I think would have been 24 copies total if you've got 3 divisions. So it's I think that's top 8, if I'm not mistaken. And especially 2004. Like you're like, I'm fine with the staff. Good luck on finding one of those, because that is like it's almost impossible. 2004 was the most dead year ever for Pokemon from what I've seen, at least when it comes to Worlds cards. And when it comes to 2004 specifically, even a staff. So the most recent staff that I know about that I was approached with was a PSA 6. And I think, I mean, I had a different price that was discussed with me, but I think right now they have it up for, it's not on eBay or anything. This is just someone that is out there and trying to sell it. I think it's like $10,000 for a PSA 6 staff. It's just one of those things to where when you start looking at like world championship cards, you know, everybody sees like the, you know, champions festivals and stuff like 2022, 2019, a lot of people buying those. 2004 is like the year for anyone who collects worlds cards like that. And I think I saw a comment earlier from somebody talking about subsets. If worlds cards are subsets, and I know Dan is going to love to talk about the number 1, 2, and 3 here in a minute. But outside of those, you know, the 6-figure level cards, these are the chase cards for people. They're affordable trophies. And a semi-finalist 2004, I've followed these for years now. I have never seen a semi-finalist, much less graded or even available for sale. So this is the first time that I've ever seen it. You know, I have a eBay watch list that notifies me, and I was like, oh, what is this? Another non-stamped, no stamped card. I don't even want to look at it, but I'm going to click it anyway. And then I saw that, and I was like, they want 55K. They accepted 48. I think it's reasonable because anyone who's trying to complete a set, I mean, you look at Rusty's 2005 finalist that sold for, what was that? I think it was like 50K, right? I can't remember the exact number.
I think it was 50K.
50?
Sounds right.
So so a 2005 finalist is still more common than a 2004 semifinalist. To put that in perspective, at least from availability. And this is a subjective opinion, but 2004, anything quarterfinalists and above, I mean, God forbid a finalist comes out from 2004, which I don't think that'll happen. I know someone who has 2 of them, but I don't think they'll ever sell them. It makes sense to me because of the year, not because, oh, it's a general worlds card. You can find the stats, you can find that. You can barely find a regular competitor stamp copy, much less like top stamps. They just don't come up for sale. So I would attribute those to like, let's say like some of the, like the Art Academy cards, for example, like think of it that way. Like they come up for sale, but not really. It's just one of those high priced items that if you're in the know, like, and the people who are buyers for that, they're willing to spend that much. So I'm not surprised. I was just happy to see one posted, to be honest. Like that's how rare they are. So I'll pass it on to Dan so he can talk about the number 1 through 3 and what else he would buy with 48K. So on to you, Dan.
There are so many things I would buy with 48K before I would buy that. Right. I'm pretty on with Nick about this. Let me think of which angle I want to come at it first. Semi-finalist. So in 2004, the way that it worked, you got only the placement where you finished. Like a semi-finalist in 2022 would have gotten semi-finalist, quarterfinalist, top 16, top 32, all the way on down. Some years they got 2 of the place they finished, 1 of every trailing. Some year they got 2 of each the whole way. It's varied over the years, but for the first year, they got just the placement. So someone having a semi-finalist card means that they lost in the conference championship game. Who cares about the 3rd or 4th place finisher in anything? Honestly, like,
I love it.
So that's part
Ricky
1 for me.
Motto when it comes to worlds
if you ain't first, you're last. There's literally been number 2 half art Pikachus, number 3 half art Pikachus. I want to say even a number 1 half art Pikachu in the past year that sold for around 50K, some significantly less. Like there was a number 2 that sold for 25 or 30, I think. So to me, like far and away, a card that is rarer in numbers, a card that, I mean, this is the first tournament, so it's got that historic part of it. but it was a loser from the first tournament. I'd rather have a winner from a few tournaments later with the Pikachu on it, because Nick touched on the whole shared art thing. When you look at how many copies, like in 2004, was there video game and TCG just so it was just
there were roughly a little over 300 total competitors in 2004 only for the card game. And
but that's one thing. Like I have a champion stamp, and not to, I mean, disclaimer, obviously it's something that I own, but I have a champion stamp from 2014 that theoretically there should have been 6 awarded. That would be rarer in numbers. It doesn't have the condition because mine's a PSA 8. It doesn't have the age or the history because it's 10 years later. Even though the tournament in 2014 was significantly larger, there might have been 5 times, 10 times the competitors. That doesn't change the fact that a champion stamp, there was only 6 awarded because you had to win to get that. Whereas in 2004, there would have been 3 age divisions with third and fourth place each, so there would have been 6. So I guess it's on par. There would have been 6 total, I think, semifinalists, right?
Yeah,
semifinalists.
I can't remember if semifinalists is top 8. I'm pretty sure it's top 8, but I could be wrong.
I think,
but yeah, whatever the number is,
champion would be 1, and then finalists would be 1 and 2, and then semifinalists would be 3 and 4. So I think you'd only get, technically, they weren't doing champion stamps yet. Some of this is getting like really deep into the weeds, but I think there would have been 6 champions.
I'm completely okay with it.
Yeah, like I think there would have been, they weren't awarding champion stamps yet, so they were awarding finalists. Interestingly enough, I think a finalist should have equal rarity with a semifinalist. But out of the 2 finalists, they were first and second. The 2 semifinalists were third and fourth. So that's one thing I don't like about those early years, that there was no champion. You can't tell who was the winner and who was the loser. If you buy a finalist stamp, you got a 50-50 shot, I guess. If you're dealing with the recipient, you can Google who won in 2004, and you can see whether or not you're buying it from the winner or the loser. But my main things are, like, you can literally get a half art Pikachu for that, or you can get a full art Pikachu with equal number of copies awarded, or you can get just so many other great cards in the hobby. Like I talked about Mew Orbs and Pika Rings and Master's Keys and Wonder Platinums, and I would go to so many things before I would go to this personally. I would take the 2004 non-stamped for my collection. I don't do stamps. I don't do variants really. I have a champion stamp, but I'm not going to give it away. I know that a lot of people value that. I just don't personally. Like I'm talking down a card that I own that I'm actively trying to sell at some point. But like even the champion stamp, I'm just not super attached to it. I much rather equal rarity to the full art Pikachu that I have, but I much rather go to the actual trophy card, the half art or the full art of someone who won. The 3 and the 4 though. I mean, I do own a 3. I used to own a 4 Pikachu, a couple of them. I value the number 1 so much more than the 2, 3, or the 4 when it comes to the full art and the half art Pikachus too, because you collect Super Bowl rings. You don't collect paraphernalia from those who lost in the Super Bowl, let alone those who lost in the conference championship game. It's just not a thing.
I'm loving the loser conversation. It kills me. It makes me crack up so much.
You're gonna make all these people feel terrible about themselves.
I know.
No hate to
Ricky
the person
Bobby,
who. That's a massive accomplishment. That's a massive accomplishment to go to the 2004.
Of 2004.
It's a massive accomplishment, but I just don't want it.
But here's the thing: is you kind of get into almost like the modern and vintage conversation with that, because it's like you can't compare a 2014 champion stamp to a 2004 semifinal. Like there's a decade difference in that. It's like no different than comparing Moonbreon to another $1,500 or $1,600 card from vintage. It's like,
oh, I give it
I'd
that,
rather just have this because it's new, you know. Because I think especially being like you said, the first tournament, also like a very low amount of people there. So even just being able to like, especially if I'm in like a condition like that, because traditionally from my experience, competitors don't care. They're not collectors. They're just not. Like some are, but very rarely do I find competitors who are competing at that level that care about collecting. So most of the time it's a sole owner card. Whoever bought that raw or if it was the competitor who graded it. I highly doubt it because they don't really grade either. They probably bought it from a single owner. It's not a card that gets passed around. It's not one that shows up. I think I saw somebody who mentioned maybe it was the guy who bought Rusty's 05. So it was not. So he actually has every stamp from every single World's year, including 04, I believe. I'd have to double check to see if he has 04 finalists. I'm not sure, but I know that he's got at least one top stamp from every single year, which might have been his goal. But that's the thing is that's the hard conversation, right? Is like everybody brings up, well, here's this other year and here's this, but it's not 2004. And like, there's a reason that there's such a premium on those 2004 cards versus even 2005 a year later. It's just a completely different. It's like, and people talk about like the same art or whatever, like, you get tropical winds, things like that. But it's like every single one of those is unique. And 2004 was like the first. So it kind of goes back to those vintage fundamentals, which I think is really where that inherent value comes in. Sure, can you buy like half arts and stuff for later years? Sure, but like there's no story really behind that. Like, I mean, there is a story of like, oh, this person won or this person, was in this tournament, but like 2004 was like the first. So I think it just goes back again to kind of a modern and a vintage take. It's like that has so much more historical value than a 2014. From a decade later. So that's the way that I look at that, and why I'm not surprised there are collectors out there who know, hey, I've been looking for 2004 cards for literally years and I've never seen it come up. I'm going to make this buy. So that's kind of my thought on it. I don't subscribe as much to the loser mentality, which is still making me laugh.
And clearly, but the market is the sum of everyone's opinions. This buyer, they probably have a lot more money than I do because I do not have the money to spend. That was probably a purchase for a collection. That was not a purchase to flip at that price. I don't believe they're in a completely different class, and I'm not trying to yuck yums and things like that. But one last analogy to kind of like hammer my point home a little bit, and I'm sure some people are on my side and some people are on your side, and obviously the buyer and the seller, they agreed to a price. So it's a valid data point, assuming it all goes through and whatever. But like Super Bowl 1. But not Super Bowl 1. Conference Championship 1. Would you rather have a jersey from a loser of the Conference Championship game in 1960 whatever, 1950 whatever, or would you rather have a Super Bowl ring from a winner in 2014? I don't know who won it in 2014 off the top of my head.
To a ring? No. Well, how about a jersey from a Super Bowl winner? That's ridiculous. Would you rather have this crazy expensive jewelry from the winner, or
but that's the thing. Like I would put the half art Pikachu. I would put the half art Pikachu as like a ring. The half art Pikachu is like the trophy for winning it. The ring is the trophy for winning it. Whereas the jersey is like, yeah, this is just like, I think a jersey is a more apt comparison because it's literally a shared art stamp with tens of thousands of copies or thousands of copies, whatever the number is. I don't know. But again, we don't have to harp on it. We don't have to go the 48,000 sale. If it's paid, it happened. Yeah, that's what it's worth. So what I think about what it should be worth, it doesn't matter at all. Those are just my thoughts.
Yeah, the only thing that I'll kind of end that with is it is interesting that it was put on eBay. It screams like inexperienced seller, in my opinion, or original competitor, or someone who just happened upon it in a collection. Like it surprised me that was posted on eBay for $55,000. That was one thing that you just don't see that tier of cards sell on an eBay platform of all things, for a myriad of reasons I'm sure we're all aware of. But like that was interesting that wasn't privately sold. So I don't know. Maybe someone saw their chance.
I think they did well though.
Fun band.
48K.
Yeah.
48K, paying the taxes on it. They're in good shape, I think.
If they threw it on eBay, they did very well. Like I would imagine. So
I think we have two more to get through, and we're nearing an hour, so we should try to get through these some lengthy ones. But Wes Carp says, how do you guys get around paying the IRS a majority of that profit? Dangerous sounding question. I feel like I'm completely screwed because I made like $10 or so here and there, selling products at around $200 or so. How am I going to be able to explain to the IRS next year that I really didn't profit that much money when my eBay account will say I profited the whole amount? Thanks for your time. So I think what you're talking about is that a 1099 that you'll get from eBay only shows your gross sales. It does nothing to show the cost of goods sold. you need to sit down with your accountant and you need to watch some actual tax advice videos because you're not going to get that here. But yeah, the way that it works, you give all the numbers to your accountant that they ask for, including like all purchase prices that you paid for grading fees, all costs associated with selling, eBay fees, store fees, and then your accountant will know what to do with those numbers and properly file your taxes. That's my answer.
Yeah, this is a very funny question to ask in a public forum, but I don't blame you for asking. It's so hard. First off, Dan said talk to your CPA. I'll give you step one: find a CPA if you need to. It is worth the money.
Yep.
Even if you're just getting a consult for advice, like it's not a bad way to do it. And I'm assuming you're talking about like the $600 1099 tier, like Dan mentioned. I kind of briefly brought this up before we went live, but I think right now with the $600 cutoff, like, and you're going to be getting a 1099, I think a lot of people who are selling cards, I mean, you got to think 365 days a year, you're talking about like $1.50 roughly in card sales a day, and you're going to hit that. So I think a lot of people should probably look into either educating themselves or partnering with maybe a CPA if you're in like the multiple thousands in sales a year, which I don't think is a very difficult thing to do if you're fairly engaged, and see what the benefit would be to formalize a business for write-offs to help with that. The tax system is extremely complex on purpose, and there's professionals that you pay to navigate that for you. So I would recommend not counting on like YouTube live streamers like us to probably answer it for you. It's not the best move. You'll probably lose money realistically. The best way to do it is definitely to find a CPA, definitely talk to them and see what that is like. And this is coming from somebody who formalized a business in July of this year. So this is something that I'd always kind of thought about it, and I've learned a lot over the course of the last couple of months. And Dan and Nick both have put out, very informative videos, but they're opinion videos. So if you really want factual like information that will hold up with the government, definitely get a CPA, talk to them, figure out, write off your stapler. I don't care what it is. Like try and keep as much as try to expense as many things as you can. But doing that outside of formalizing a business is almost impossible. So just look into it more depending on your sales. I mean, if you're between $600 and $1,000 in sales a year, that's I'm sorry, that sucks. I would personally probably end up looking at a different platform other than eBay and just start doing private sales at that point, because it just doesn't make sense to pay that amount of tax on $750 in sales. So just kind of navigate that as best you can. Again, I'll say it for Dan, not financial advice, everybody. Like just kind of navigate it your own, but seek professional guidance on that from people who are actually like CPAs. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, I would agree with you guys. Biggest thing, CPA. You can do it on TurboTax. I tried doing it on TurboTax the first year to save $100 or so, and the process is just an absolute nightmare. So definitely look into an accountant. They're going to save you more money than what you're going to spend on them. So it's well worth it. You're going to have to pay for it, but like I said, you're going to save more money than you're actually paying. If you try to do your taxes yourself. The other big thing is to separate your business from your personal bank accounts. I went years without doing that, and it makes a world of difference to have completely separate bank accounts for your business and your personal stuff. To keep track of everything. And then finally, just keep track of all your receipts, shipping, eBay fees, purchases, any supplies that you purchase. But yeah, that's some basic stuff. But the biggest thing is just talk to an accountant. Unless you're really into it and you want to get into the nitty gritty, it's just so worthwhile to have someone else deal with that stuff.
Yeah. Definitely. And there are actually, like, I've actually watched some, there are some like actual accountants on YouTube. I would still be cautious because every jurisdiction is different, every state, every county, but like Not Your Dad's CPA, I believe is one of them that has some very good YouTube videos out there. Don't take it as gospel. That is like, he is an accountant and he says consult accountants local to you. he says like don't just take all this and run to the bank with it. Like definitely, but it's good information to take in so that when you go find your own CPA, you ask the right questions. Because if you start going to them asking very broad, vague questions that like don't get you to the right answers, it's expensive to do that at $100 or $150 an hour or whatever they're charging. So do as much preparation as you can for free and then go would be my recommendation. I think this is our last one now. Then we can get to the live chat about an hour ago. So Robert Paulson asks, my question for the next podcast, Gem Mint Pokemon just completed one of the biggest achievements there is in the Pokemon hobby. What do you think his next goal will be, or do you think he's done with collecting Pokemon? I'm hoping he starts collecting PSA 10s of the Nintendo Holo EX series. Yeah, for anyone who's unaware, I mean, go check out Zach, Gem Mint Pokemon. Crazy achievement, unlimited, and first edition, all PSA 10 holos from the EX era. He's still actively working on, as far as I understand, PSA 10s of some of the reverse holos. I think he still needs a few from Skyridge, a few from Expedition maybe. So I think he has a wants list out there. I don't know if it's linked on his Instagram, but it might be linked on his E4 account, Mount Moon account. So check that out, see if you can help him along. He is still actively collecting Pokemon, I guess is partially my answer. What he does after he finishes that, he's always going to conventions, buying OC, low saturation, high saturation, any kind of oddity that he can find. Miscut, no symbol holos, as many as he can find. So I think he'll stay engaged in one way or another. I think he's a very passionate person about this hobby. So yeah, I think he'll stay busy. Whether or not he goes into future eras, no idea, but it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, Zach isn't going to stop collecting, if that's what people think. Like, there's that, he's just not that type of guy. I know he dabbles in sports as well, so like, there's always an avenue for him to collect. Now, granted, is he going to do what he's done in Pokemon and another hobby? Highly doubt it. Highly doubt that's the case. Will he work toward it? Yes, but like, I don't know how many years that he spent doing it, but it was just such an amazing thing to be able to be like engaged in this hobby, to see it actually come to fruition, and like him opening that final card and like being so excited about it. But no, I don't think that he's going to stop. I think he'll find, Zach has a very similar brain to a lot of us. Like, if we have achieved certain like collectible goals, kind of like, Dan mentioned way earlier in the stream, we're going to find something else. Like, there's always going to be something to collect. And realistically, the way collectibles have been in the last 2 years, there's too much to collect. I think that's the more like difficult problem for people to navigate versus, okay, I'm done. I've finished like collecting. Like, if you're a collector at heart, like he is, and he truly is, and probably one of the most determined, focused people I've met in this hobby, like he's going to find something else, and he's going to continue. It's just going to be another thing to do. And that's just one checkbox out of probably many that he has personally that he wants to go after and have fun with. And that's the thing is, Dan mentioned he goes to all the convention stuff. We saw him at Denver Collecticon, hung out for a bit. He has fun still. And I think that's really the main thing, is it's not necessarily just a task list for him to get it all done. Like, he really enjoys engaging and having fun with it. And he does that in Pokemon. He does that in other things as well. Because him and I have had conversations about that. So yeah, I don't think he's going to stop collecting in general at all.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with you guys on that one. He'll never leave Pokemon. He was basically done with the WotC set like a year ago. He bought, I think it was the Slow King, and then he was down to the Ampharos. So he's been looking for that card for that's been the last card missing for like a year. And like you guys were saying, he still goes to every Collecticon. He still buys an absurd amount of stuff at all these Collecticons. So even though he was almost close with his original goal of the PSA 10 WotC sets, he still just is in love with Pokemon and still buys like an absolute madman.
And yeah, he was buying other things outside of that main collection goal. That's probably the biggest testament. Like, he still looks for like old back Japanese or error cards. I think somebody mentioned in chat. Like, it's not just like that was all the only thing he was saving up to buy. Like, he was still collecting other things. So yeah, if you, I know somebody mentioned like hopefully he puts out more YouTube videos and stuff. Like, I'm sure he will. He seems to be a little bit more active now that he's done that. But Yeah, I mean that's he even mentioned in his video talking about the community. It was not possible without the community. So I feel like now that this is achieved, we'll probably see a lot more gem met coming out of the woodwork and engaging because I mean, guys, that goal is insane. It's insane to even take on, much less complete. So um, yeah, I agree.
We're done. We're done with the questions from last week. 1 hour in, so now we've got. I think we're gonna call it at 1 a.m. Eastern time. So we've got about 2 more hours to hang out with the chat. We've got an hour worth of chat backlog to make it through. So let's dive right into it. And I don't know if you have anything to add on this, but with DBS being over 20 sets deep now, is it here to stay? Do you do anything with DBS, Nick?
I do not do a single thing with it. I could not tell you. I didn't even know there was 20 sets.
To be fair, I'm in it. I didn't know that they had 20 sets, but I'm not surprised because they release something like every 2 months.
So what do you think, Cole? Is it here to stay?
For sure. It's first off, it's a massive IP. Like I know everybody talks Pokemon being the largest IP ever. Like Dragon Ball has people in every single age group, just as Pokemon does. So I think it's definitely here to stay. I think Bandai. I know Mason's in the chat, and he'll probably love this. They don't handle things well, or they haven't historically. A lot of people don't know that Dragon Ball Super came out in 2017. Like it's a 5-year-old TCG, and it's already had like this much market acknowledgement and interest and things like that. I mean, they've definitely had their hiccups over time, just mainly because of Bandai. And one thing I brought this up with a few people, and I can't remember if it was like a Discord chat or maybe it was on my channel. I can't really remember. I talked so many of these, but the main thing is that they have almost no social presence compared to Pokemon. There is a PokeTuber for every single niche of this entire hobby. Dragon Ball, there's like one Canadian guy and a lot of people that live in Australia. And it's all box breaks. Like there's no educational content. It's extremely hard to find this stuff. And there's still so many people who are engaged in it. Even Bandai themselves, the primary social media that they share all of their releases and stuff on is Facebook. They don't have like Instagram posts. They don't have Twitter posts. They don't have like, a bunch of stuff like that. Like it's just one of those TCGs that I think is just as nostalgic as Pokemon, and it definitely is for me as well. I don't think it's going anywhere. I think they are just now finding their stride and really getting it, on the radar for a lot of people. And I've said this in a few lives that there's a lot of people that are kind of, I guess, Ghostbusters reference, like crossing the streams when it comes to TCGs, because a lot of people grew up with Pokemon. I'm 32, so I was born in 90. A lot of people grew up with Dragon Ball and Pokemon. I mean, those are really the two biggest ones. There's some Digimon guys out there, but we don't talk to them. But the main thing is just that it's one of those things that, when people got back into Pokemon, they got back because they wanted to discover their nostalgia. And I think that they enjoyed the feeling of doing that. And so I think a lot of people are now searching back and thinking like, what else did I really enjoy? Dragon Ball was cool. Do they have a card game? Oh, wow, they actually do. So they do sell out. Their cases are crazy expensive. Their booster boxes go up a ton. And they've got really great chase cards now. So not to mention the art is just absolutely fantastic. As anybody who's watched my channel, has seen me I've done some case breaks and stuff. I think they're delisted, but I just do them live so people can enjoy it with me. I definitely think it's going to be here for the long term. They just had their first world championship in December of 2021. So we are literally at the very beginning of this TCG 5 years in. So I think they're doing it right. I think there's a lot of organic interest, a lot of outside people coming into it now because they're more curious and more people are talking about it. So 20 sets in, that's a lot. But realistically, it's no different than most TCGs, I think. If you think 5 years, it's 4 sets a year. So, yeah. Even Dan Ketchum Collectibles is on the Dragon Ball train. He's just buying collections left and right now, right?
Yeah, can you see the stream? Do you have that up?
I haven't hit play, but I will.
Oh, if you go to live, I put a bunch of my recent acquisitions on screen.
Right, I'm watching you now.
Tomorrow I'm gonna live stream. It's gonna be an all non-Pokemon live stream because that 23K collection that I bought of Pokemon, the guy had 25K of non-Pokemon. So a ton of Dragon Ball Super, Dragon Ball Score, a lot of Naruto, a lot of different things. Pretty fun to start like learning about some of these different TCGs, some of these old dead TCGs, a lot of different stuff going on. So I'm going to kind of learn it alongside YouTube, kind of teach and learn myself as I go. I've had a lot of like late night Discord calls, video calls with people going through as I was deciding whether or not I wanted to buy the collection. Took a bit of a gamble, 17,000 cards, but obviously they're not all of this caliber, but there's definitely some good ones in there that I got to work through. Pretty cool. I mean, I didn't have a tie to the Dragon Ball Z franchise. Like, I didn't watch it when I was younger. I don't watch it now. But I can still appreciate other people's appreciation for it. Like, kind of similar, even in Pokemon, that 48K sale we talked about. It's not my thing. I wouldn't have bought it for that. But I can appreciate that someone, like, it's great. It's great for the hobby that people are that engaged in the little niche areas. And, I mean, to say, like, trophy-esque cards are niche, I mean, they are. But, like, obviously it's just really cool to see. I think it's healthy. It's good for the future of everything. The fact that people value these things so much. So yeah, I'm looking forward to working my way through these binders and just learning new things, because aside from MetaZoo, I've not really branched out into other things. So start doing that now a little bit here and there.
I love hearing that. And Mason even said that Son Goku is incredible. So like, especially the SIG cards, I just put the video stream up here. Yeah, those are like 2017, I believe is when those came out. And that's, I mean, we're talking $700 to $1,000 cards, guys. Like, there's interest here. Like, there are people actually spending that kind of money on stuff outside of Pokemon. And I know that's like, you know, that may be common knowledge for most people, but like some people don't realize that like these other TCGs, there's a lot of money being exchanged for these cards. Now, granted, I mean, do you have like $400,000 cards? No, you don't. But there are people who are actually going into, you know, your 4-figure cards like pretty regularly. And Mason even mentioned in here too, especially with them printing clean cards, the quality control is better than any TCG I've ever seen. I mean, it's kind of unreal how well they print their cards. And Mason, I can't remember whose channel it was on. I think it was Basic Trainer's first stream. Shout out Basic Trainer if he's in the chat. But if they print their cards, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mason, in the chat, but I believe they print their cards actually in Japan, and then they ship them here. So they actually, like, the quality is insane. Like, the gem rate
it says made in Japan ridiculous. On them.
Yeah, so it's pretty ridiculous. So congrats on the raw buys. I'm sure you'll do well. I've done pretty well myself with that. I think out of 52 or 53 Dragon Ball Super cards I've graded, not including the recent subs that are still there, I've had one PSA 9 and the rest have been PSA 10s. So just to give you kind of an idea on how that quality control is, I mean, it's fantastic. So
that's crazy.
Yeah, that is wild.
Yeah. Coming from the Pokemon world, that's ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, coming from like jungle and fossil boxes that I ripped so many of, all that silvering, all the mid-era stuff that I'm grading right now from the other collection, cutting them with rusty barbed wire.
Coming from $120 MSRP boxes in 2022 is probably what I would reference. It's like, we can't even get it right now, but yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So Blazer OP asks, what are your thoughts on the Charizard UPC PSA 10s crashing to 250? Was it a surprise it crashed so soon? Also, any losses grading them? My grades just popped. I graded 2 at 100, which was ill-advised. One hit a 9, so I'm going to lose money there. One hit a 10. So on the $100 tier, 1.9, 110, probably make a little bit of money, not a ton, all said and done. I could have sold them raw for like, what, $35 a piece or so. So you have to factor that in as well. My 650s also hit, and I got 3 10s and 3 9s. So overall, all said and done, I'm probably going to make like a couple $100 net of fees. If that, across the 8 cards, I probably would have been better off just selling them raw. And I kind of knew that when I sent them out. I think I attributed roughly a 60 or 70% chance of getting 10s on them. And then I got 50% 10s overall. So within the expected plus or minus, I guess. Fair enough. We talked about this. Everyone's talked about this so many times. And one thing I said is, I don't care how big the demand is. If the supply is bigger, things will go down. I think a lot of people expected $300 UPCs for Christmas. People expected $1,000 PSA 10s. And I think it's honestly healthy. I think it's good in a lot of ways that people get punished a little bit or maybe don't win as big as they think they should have or could have. I think it's a bit of a reality check. I think long term, I think the sealed product can still do well. But short term, I got 70-ish wave 1. I'm getting 70-ish next week or the week after, I think. With the holiday, I'm not sure when they'll land, but I have a lot more coming. And we're already nearing, I think TCG players like what, 125? I think I'm on Troll and Toad at about 125. I will go sub MSRP with them. I'm not going to sell them all, but I don't want to sit on 100 of them for potentially the next year if they get a third wave or a fourth wave. Like there's a certain number that I want to get down to. What that is exactly, I don't know. It'll be kind of a feel thing. But my cost is 80. If I have to sell them on Troll and Toad to get $5 or $10 profit a box, sell them at 100, I will sell some of them out of them at 100. Like that's winning. Selling them at 100 is still winning. I'm still making money. Not as much as I would have hoped. Obviously, I would have loved it if they went to 300, given that I had 70 of them on wave 1, but not surprising at all. And I think it's weird to say that the price crashed to 250. I mean, the price, thankfully, for the first couple buyers, the price never started as high as like the special delivery Charizard. The price started lower, and I honestly think that's better. I think it's better that the first couple of buyers don't get slapped so hard and they have some money to spend somewhere else. That's my take.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree on the crashing side. I mean, 250 is still pretty solid for a what was it, $120 product with 3 promos in it.
Yep.
Me personally, so I have, I'll do a PSA return video on my channel. It's supposed to be here tomorrow for the first 5 that I sent off. So I sent express 5 of them. 3 of them got 10s. So
Sweet.
I trust my grading eye now a little bit better now, I guess I'd say. And then I have 7 that I sent at economy. And those were interesting. I have 2 9 OCs, which I've never had a qualifier from PSA ever. And I just got 2 out of this one. So I actually don't mind it because I take mint 9 OC as in like this card's perfect, except like the quality sucks. So I'm not mad at that, I guess. I did get a 7, and then the rest were 9. So fairly decent grades, for the most part. The thing is I'm not leveraged on them, so I don't necessarily like. I'll sell a few in the beginning. I'm going to try and obviously sell the 10s, but I'm pretty good about like when I do put money into something like this that I want to. I'm fine holding them for a little bit for them to more stabilize, because I think right now people are kind of shell shocked with how many are hitting the market. And I think over time, once those are dumped, I think overall, I'll be able to get a decent price for them. But the question was, any losses on grading them? Probably right now. If I threw them all up on eBay auction, sure, I would definitely lose money from grading costs and the box costs and all of that. I bought 6 boxes, set aside 2 just to keep sealed. I have 2 UPCs left, so I just put 2 Charizard UPCs or UPCs from Celebrations. So 2 Celebration UPCs, 2 Charizard UPCs, just to hold them. I mean, it doesn't matter. And I mean, that's kind of my recommendation for most people if you're going to throw in a ton of money into something like this, is if you're not leveraged, this isn't that big of a deal. It's like, sure, did they go down? Yeah, but I mean, you got to think, it's Charizard. Obviously, the quality control was terrible. We'll see what the future waves have, to give us. But if it's already printed and they're just going to release it, then yeah, I mean, I think over time, sure, they'll go up. I'm not one of those people who tries to time the market or sell at the top. I don't think that's really possible. I just think that, as long as I can get the price that I want out of them, I'm happy selling. If somebody makes more than me, great, good for them. My main thing is make a little bit off of the initial investment, keep the sealed product, and enjoy the promos while I have them. So yeah, but I have seen people getting absolutely destroyed on some that they sent in. And hopefully that's a learning experience for you to be able to not giving you any flack at all, but like being able to look at these cards and like actually know what to look for. Like if you're getting PSA 6s left and right or 7s like myself, you know, I've graded a ton of cards and still got a 7. I was probably more optimistic sending it than anything because I didn't want to sell it raw. But that's just something to kind of think about, is whenever you're looking at a product, being able to understand the grading scale, understand the risk, and not leveraging yourself and putting all your eggs in one basket and saying, sure, this is going to stonk 100%. And then you've got, you know, a $4,000 credit card bill that you've got to pay like next month, you know, so that's kind of my whole take on that.
I was a little surprised that the first few 10s didn't go for more, especially considering the fact of everyone talking about the quality control being terrible and all the cards being off center. I was expecting the first few to go a little bit higher. The highest sale I saw was high 3s, maybe low 4s. The first sale that I saw on eBay. So I was kind of surprised by that, but at the same time, there are a lot of these Charizard UPCs out there. We saw Target and Walmart having pre-orders basically for like a week or so without running out of stock. So we knew that there was going to be a lot of supply. So on the flip side, it kind of does make sense that the pricing was lower than I expected. But yeah, I think 250 right out of the gate is decent. I sent one set of 3 off at the $100 tier. Fortunately, I lucked out and they all got 10s, so I'll do well on that one. I did send another. I opened 4, so I sent another 3 sets off at the $30 tier or $50 tier, and those ones I thought were. If I remember correctly, there was like one set that was like borderline 9-10, and then 2 of the sets I thought were going to get 10 or 9s. So sending those at 50, I think is going to be a mistake. I don't think I'm going to do well on those ones, but we'll see. I still haven't even got my grades for the $50 tier ones yet, so I'm a little bummed about that because I've already heard people getting their grades already. So hopefully mine are done soon. But then with the reprint thing, or Wave 2, I thought that was coming out in January, but like Dan mentioned, that's going to be here in a few weeks. I work with 2 distributors, and one of my distributors actually just shipped Wave 2 today. So I'll have my Wave 2 Charizard UPCs tomorrow from one of my distributors. The other one, haven't heard yet, but yeah, so Wave 2 is basically here. So if you haven't picked up a UPC yet, and you want to, you might want to wait a couple days to a week.
Colt just turned into Charmander, but you want to take the next question, Nick?
Boondock Games. I can't find the episode where you all discussed eBay GSP. Can you give me your quick thoughts on it? Worth it or nay? 100% worth it. As a seller, 100% worth it. As a buyer, it does suck having to use GSP. At least I've heard. But as a seller, there is no downside to it. You're shipping it to eBay's warehouse in Kentucky. Once the tracking shows delivered there, you're done. There's no item not received cases. There's no cases of item arriving damaged. There's none of that. You're just worried about getting it to Kentucky. So that is really nice, especially during peak COVID. 2 years ago, 1 year ago, whenever that was. Shipping internationally, massive delays. Everything was getting lost. That's when I switched over to GSP, and I will never look back. I just recently did a deal through PayPal Goods and Services to someone who lived in Norway, and I was a little hesitant to ship internationally. I used to do it all the time. I haven't shipped internationally in a long time, so I was a little bit hesitant to do it, because he was paying goods and services, so if anything does happen, that's going to be on me. But fortunately, he was fine declaring it at the full value, so there is going to be insurance and all that. But yeah, eBay GSP all the way, 100%. And then another plus side, which I didn't realize this before last week, is if you charge shipping on your items, and someone internationally buys that item through the GSP program, as the seller, you're not able to send them an invoice. So when the buyer pays, say I charge $4 shipping on my consignment graded cards. So if the buyer buys 2 graded cards, instead of me combining that shipment into one invoice and charging, say, $5, that buyer is going to pay $8 shipping because 4 times 2. So I actually reached out to eBay because I was getting messages from people saying, hey, can you send me a combined shipping invoice? I don't think shipping should be this expensive. And as a seller, it doesn't even allow you to send an invoice to people who are buying through eBay GSP. So I called eBay to kind of get some answers on that. And I basically asked why we couldn't send invoices and whether or not being able to send invoices was going to affect the shipping rating on eBay. And they told me that GSP buyers don't have that star rating for shipping. So I'm making a decent bit more money by not being able to send them a combined shipping invoice, and they're not able to affect my my little star ratings either. So that's a win-win for me.
Yeah, I've never had an issue with it. I've only recently, like I said, since July, really overhauled like listings and putting things on eBay and things like that. And GSP's been fine. I've never had an issue really with it. Even my God Rare that I sold, my God Rare Vegeta, which was I think sold for like $4,100 or something. Which well, actually that's probably not a good example because I think GSP actually caps at $2,500 a card, so I had to ship that myself. But anything under that I've had, shipments go through, never been a problem. eBay updates you, hey, it's ready to go, it's being shipped out, it'll arrive this time. Like you said, all the way. I mean, there's really, it's probably one of the best features I like about eBay because same thing, all of my listings prior to me actually like doing this as a business was to not sell internationally, but it does open your buyer pool up a ton. So that's really the biggest plus with it. You do pay a little bit more money because it is an international sale, but like Nick said, like, on the shipping side, you do tend to make up for it if it's multiple items. So yeah, I have no issue with it. I think it's a great service they offer.
Yeah, if you're a seller and you're only selling domestically, clicking that button to enable GSP international sales is a no-brainer from the selling side because you will open yourself up. Worst case, international people won't buy it. Best case, you'll get some amount of those sales that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise. So it's like, it's a no-lose situation. I've made probably 1,000+ GSP sales over the years now. I've been in it for several years. I never shipped internationally direct. If you are someone who's shipping internationally direct as of today, there might be some downsides. You might lose some buyers because shipping directly, you might be able to do it cheaper than eBay authenticity guarantee or eBay GSP does it. But yeah, once you deliver it to that Erlanger, Kentucky address, you wash your hands of it. You're done. Your part is done. The whole international thing. I've had situations where it got lost internationally and they opened a case. Instantly, eBay puts the case like on a freeze or whatever. They take me out of it. They're like, hey, we know that you got this to us. We lost it on our part. This is not going to affect you. And they end up closing it in the decision for the buyer. No effect to you. They refund them because they were the ones who forwarded it. And it's beautiful. It's perfect. Couldn't recommend it more. From a buyer side too, I think some international folk might not like my answer here, but if you're seeing items that you wouldn't see otherwise, it's like, I don't understand how you can complain about it because for me, if GSP didn't exist, I would not ship internationally. So worst case scenario, you have access to items that you wouldn't have otherwise. Maybe they're too expensive. I don't understand though, complaining about an item that's listed too high. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't make sense. Just don't buy it. Having the option though, like I sell, again, as I said, I've sold over 1,000 GSP items. So some amount of people message me, hey, the shipping seems high. Hey, the VAT seems high. I'm like, I don't do any of that. I ship for free. If you want to open up a PWCC vault, if you want to use Ship My Cards or a similar service, if you have a buddy in the US, perfect. Use their address. I'll ship it to them. You save a bunch of money. Whatever you do afterwards, whatever. I don't care. Like, declare it how you want to declare it. Have your buddy ship it. Have PWCC ship it. But if you're doing it direct, it's going to be GSP only, and it's just great. So yeah, there's options out there. If if any international buyers are listening that are frustrated by the GSP, open a PWCC vault, open a Ship My Cards account, because those services are great. I have international friends who use them very successfully. So there's more options.
Raw fans, I think is what that answer is. Good service.
Yeah, 100%.
Jordan asks, this is one you alluded to earlier, Peek. Question for you all. I'm a huge fan of subsets. Some of my favorite are the Pokemon Center EV Poncho promos, all the Sword Shield Gold Pokemon, Neo Shinings, and Gen 5 Secret Shinies. Do any subset style releases specifically interest or capture you? All of them at one point or another. I was doing the SH subset from the Diamond and Pearl Platinum eras. I was doing every chase card in PSA 9. I had all the level X's, I had all the X's, all the gold stars, all the legend cards, all the primes. I had all the break cards at one point in PSA 9. I know those don't do it for a lot of people, but like literally every subset was of interest to me at one point or another. The SL subset from the Call Legends, those shinies, beautiful subset. There's so many great ones out there through the history of Pokemon. I guess some of the standout ones would be the Call Legend shinies, the gold stars is an obvious one, and more of a niche one, trying to think what it would be. I mean, there are some really niche ones like the Snowflake calendar. There are the Rumble cards. There's so many out there, but I guess that's enough of an answer for me on my taste. What about you?
I would say Worlds promos, specifically the very fairly priced, accurate sales data that we have for every Worlds promos, especially 04 semifinalist. No, Worlds promos are definitely good. That's one of the ones that I'm always buying those and want to negotiate and make those deals happen. But outside of that, I would say Masaki promos are a good subset. I love Masaki promos. That's actually one of the very first sets that I actually wanted to complete in a PSA 9 set. Now, granted, I was doing that in the Boom, so I had every single one in a PSA 9 except for Gengar, because Gengar was just ridiculous as far as price. Like PSA 10s go for 10 grand now. The PSA 9s were like 15 or something crazy like back then. So, I mean, they were just so expensive. So I ended up not even halfway, more than halfway completing the set. But Masaki promos, I think, are one of the coolest ones. I watched an old SM Pratt video and was like, I love these. I love they're hard to get in good condition. So I want to go for a 9 set. Vending series is always cool. Southern Islands is always cool. Those are ones that kind of stand out off the top of my head. But yeah, that's I think a very unique thing that we have with Pokemon is there's so many subsets of what we collect. There's not a lot of that in a lot of other TCGs. Like you can kind of make them up as you go along, but it really just goes to old back Japanese is really what I pay attention to. Like when it comes to subsets, there's some English, you had mentioned a couple in your question, but yeah, I would say Southern Islands, Masaki promos, and Worlds promos, probably the three main ones that stand out to me that I've ever shown any interest in.
Yeah, I was the first thing that came to my mind when you read this question, Dan, was the Masaki promos. That was the first thing that came to my mind. Absolutely love those cards. I'm not big into Japanese, but those cards in particular, absolutely love those. And then another ones that I thought of, the Pikachu World Collection. Really like those cards. I don't know if I'd consider that a subset or just more of a collection, but really like those cards as well. And then for modern stuff, up until Silver Tempest, I really liked the character rares from the Trainer Gallery subset, and started collecting those in English. Silver Tempest, I really wasn't a fan of the character rares. I've got a video coming out tomorrow going over all the hit cards that I pulled from Silver Tempest, and I talk about that a little bit in there. But yeah, that's another one. I was talking about the WotC one, but that Pikachu World Collection too is really good. I never knew about I learned about this in one of our podcasts about the flags being in all the backgrounds. I think it was with Echo Base we were talking about that. And
well, the thing is, it's not even it's not even really actually a flag. It's like it's canyon walls that kind of are striped, and then the starry background. It looks like a flag, but it's not actually a flag. I don't think.
I've never heard of this. Actually,
but
I don't remember
all
this.
of the languages have that. Like the French has that whatever colors, red, white,
Red,
blue.
green, white.
Right, yeah, whatever.
They're stylized to look like they're flags, but maybe some of them are actually flags. But it just left the screen for you guys, but it'll come back soon. It looks like it's canyon walls because it's on both sides. Obviously, the flag top left is the stars, bottom right, all that is the stripes, but the canyon walls are on both the left and the right. The stars are in the middle. It looks and it has the feel of a flag, but it's not actually the flag. Really cool design, though. I think it's a really cool card.
Yeah. So Nick, do you have a favorite 2000 or 2010? On which one of those collections you prefer?
I would have to go with the originals. 2000 for me, for sure.
That birthday Pika.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that was one of the very few childhood items I still had like 20 years later or whatever. I sold it in, well, it might have been 2021. So I sold it in 2021, but I have a twin brother. So we opened his and I kept mine. So I was like, a flipper, dirty flipper from like the beginning. But I was like, I'm going to keep mine sealed. And so that was one of the very few items that I kept from my childhood collection, but absolutely love that collection that you could see through it. It was in the binder. That was cool. Like, yeah, I love the World collection, man. I don't hear too many people talk about that. So that's awesome.
You want to take that next one? Yeah.
Yeah. Pokemartin. Question. If by the time your Charizard UPCs come back, the 9s are selling for $30, will you still sell them? It depends on what tier I sent them off on. If they're selling for $30 and I sent them at 50, I'd probably be a little bit more hesitant to sell them. I'd probably hold on to them and put them out at a convention where I can get $30 cash instead of $30 on eBay, minus $3 for fees, minus $4 for shipping and all that stuff. But I probably would take a slight loss on them at that point. I don't think I would hold on to them for years and years and years. Maybe hold on to one set and just add that into the personal collection for a while. But I don't think I would hold on to them all and wait years and years and years for that price to go up. If I sent them up at $15, $18, I would definitely still sell them at $30. For sure. I'd rather either take a slight loss, make a slight profit, and recoup that money to put into something else than just sit on dead money and wait for the pricing to increase. What do you guys think on that one?
Absolutely not. No way I'm selling them at $30. Like, it's just not like, no. At that point, it's like I will like dig my grave and sit there and wait for them to go to at least 50, at least 60. Like, it doesn't make any sense. But this is also coming from someone who doesn't do near the volume that you and Dan do. So that's going to have an impact on that. But myself, 6 boxes, 18 promos, absolutely not. I'm selling at $30. Like, maybe after I've sold through a lot of them at a decent price and maybe I've got like 2 or 3 left over, I'm like, let me just, like you said, dead capital. I'd rather just get rid of it and put it into something else. But no, that's my answer for that. $30, absolutely. I can't see them dropping to that price, but if it does, then I'll just throw them in the dusty cabinet and like call it a day, check on them in a year or however long it's going to be and see what they look like. So that's my take on that.
What are 9s selling for right now? I have
they're 90.
No
I think the last time I looked, it was like $90.
I think some auctions have been as cheap as 50 or 60. I think some auctions.
Have they? I'm only looking to buy now, I think, but yeah.
We are 100% going to see $30 in a matter of, I'll say, in a matter of a month. We're going to see $30.
PSA 9, you think so? I guess maybe if they're, I mean, if the population
right now is $50, $60, 100%.
Looks like I'll be holding some UPC promos, guys. So hit me up if you're ready to overpay. Let's make it happen. I'm glad to sell at that price.
See, for me, like Mine are already, all the ones I sent out at 50 and 100 are shipping to me. I think they might be here tomorrow or maybe Friday. So I'm going to turn them and burn them as quick as I can. Some of them are going to be L's as far as like, I could have sold them for 35 raw right out of the gate. Now I'm going to be selling them for potentially 50 or 60 graded. Kind of like break even on the grading cost as if the card was free. The card wasn't free. But taking the question broader, will I sell a card at $30 if it's a loss? I will, if I think the card is going to be stagnant or down moving ahead. The worse than losing 10 or 20 or $50 today is losing 10 or 20 or $50 5 years from now. Worse yet is losing even more 6 months or 2 years or 5 years from now. So like, I think that's something some people fear, taking losses too much, and they make the loss bigger. If the L is growing while you're holding on to it, you might as well just take it today and not take a bigger one down the line. These cards specifically, where do I think long-term the 9s will settle? It's hard to say. Because another thing too, I think we've talked about, say you graded, like I graded 8 of them, 4 of them are 10s, 4 of them are 9s. Individually, especially the $100 9 that I graded, that one's going to be a big fat L. Because I graded it for 100 and I'm going to be selling it for like 60 or 70 probably. I mean, grading fee alone, I lost money. But when you group the whole lot together, all 8, I'm very likely to slightly win overall. So like, don't take it so individualized. If the whole play was a win, even had the whole play been a loss, had all 8 of mine gotten 9s, I would have learned something about how bad I am at pre-grading, and I would have just taken my L today. Because the short to intermediate term prospects for those cards, in my opinion, is only down. I sent out some at 15 as well. I know a lot of people who sent out a lot of them at 15. So like, there's just going to be more and more and more. The pop's going to go up and up and up. Wave 2 is coming, wave 3, wave 4, if they come. Like, I would absolutely sell them at a loss today so that I don't have to sell them at a bigger loss later. I'm not going to sit on those cards for 10 years to maybe sell them for 50. I'm going to get that money today and keep it pushing, as Retrospecs likes to say.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely taken the L on certain cards that I've graded and I'm underwater on. It's like, you know, sure, can you do it? Absolutely, and it's usually a good decision if there's no forecast for the future when it comes to that. But you know, it's one of those things. It's kind of like hindsight's 2020, right? So should I have? I mean, on the Express, I'll probably come out, like you said, like a little bit more ahead. On the $50 tier, probably not. But it's one of those things. I just can't see a $30 price point. Like, I'd rather keep it, if that makes sense. Like, it's just, for $30, you take an eBay fees, you're making $24 or whatever the actual amount is. It's like, for $24, I would buy a PSA 9 at $24. So that's kind of my gauge for it, is like, would I buy at the price that I'm selling at? Then I should probably not sell. Like, that's really where I'm at.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, everything you're saying makes sense.
And it's like, Nick and I are both larger businesses doing this full time, having that bit of dead money inventory taking up space. That's more of a concern for us, because like, it's not just the Charizards that we have. I've got some PSA 9 Gold Star Greninjas. I hit about half 10s and half 9s. The 9s are like selling for 25 raw or 25 shipped. So I'm losing money. I'm losing a little bit of money, even though I only paid $2 for the card, $18 plus shipping to grade it, fees to sell it. I'm still going to sell my 9s $20 to $25 to just get them out of here, because the 10s I'm going to sell for 80 to 100. And overall, Greninja Gold Star at 18, that's going to be a win. Not a huge win, but it's a little bit of a win. And I just keep it pushing. Turn that into more inventory and keep going with it. Felipe asks, someone hands you $50,000 to spend on Pokemon. What do you buy? As a business, I mean, there's no, like, you have to hold it. I'm going to say I would just buy a collection. I'd flip it and turn it into 60 or 80 or 100,000. That's the easy way out answer. If I had to hold it,
let's make it worth it. Collector wise.
So yeah, collector wise,
what are you buying 50K?
I talked about them earlier. I would buy as many as I can. I would look for like PSA 7, 8, 9 quality. I would look for, I could probably, for that price, I could probably get a Pika ring and a Mew orb. And if I'm lucky, maybe a Master's Key with it. I could probably get 3 or 4 cards that I've never owned before. So I would get those ones. Things in the low mid trophy prize tier Japanese that I've not owned before.
So Nick, I'm cracking up. One of them, Evolved Collectibles, said pins. Duh. So I don't know how many pins that would be, but I feel like you might have to rent your warehouse to stock those. For myself, it'd be a PSA 10 1999 Tropical Wind. I don't even know what they go for. I feel like that's probably around what a 10 would go for, I would think, but I don't think they go for more than that. I could be wrong, but PSA 10 Tropical Wind 1999. That's my Grail card. Like, I'm happy with an 8 or above, but a 10, like, done. Like, that's like the collection goal for me. So I would say that PSA 10 1999 Tropical Wind would be my go-to.
For me, it would be one of a few things. Either Legendary Collection or Skyridge Theme Deck display case. The only two that I'm missing back there. Unfortunately, you just never see those. So I don't even know with 50 grand if I would be able to buy one, just because I haven't seen one in years. Another thing that I've always wanted but could never justify the price point of, a Shadowless base set booster box. I would absolutely love to own one of those one day. I cannot justify $60,000-$70,000 to buy it, but if I was handed 50 grand, I would 100% go out and buy that.
No PSA 10, no Damaged Ninetales? I can't believe it.
Oh, I didn't even think of that one.
That's like, didn't even come up. Man, not that it would cost 50 grand, but where's the goals at, Nick? Jinmin is putting you to shame right now.
Oh, man. So Smitty, Dan Old School just got this one graded thoughts on market value. Cardass Blastoise Red Prism number 9 CGC Pristine 10. Congrats on that one. I know they're tough to grade. In terms of pricing, I have no idea. I don't even know what PSA 10s go for. I would definitely price higher than a PSA 10. Maybe like 2 to 4x what a PSA 10 goes for. Somewhere in that range. Listed as a buy it now and see what happens. But in terms of actual numbers, I have no idea. That would just be my complete wild guess. You guys have any input on that one?
He specifically wanted Dan and
so you can't even answer, Pete.
Well,
he doesn't care about your
no,
opinion.
you answer too.
To be fair, I don't even know what the card is. So I will that was a smart choice to call out Dan and Nick, because I don't look at any Cardass like cards at all.
I'm not very far ahead of you. Something comes to mind. It's probably the right one, but I'm not like 100% certain. Just answering it broadly, what I would do, because it's very, very likely that you have a pop 1 card, and there's probably not too many Cardass Red Prisms overall in CGC 10 Pristine. The first thing I would do, I would look at the PSA 9 and 10 prices. I would get a general feel for what's an increase, if any, CGC 10 Pristine to a PSA 10 for cards of that caliber, cards of that tier. And I mean, you're the owner of likely the only one in the world. So the price is whatever you set it to, if you can find a buyer willing to pay for that. So that's really the true answer. People don't like it, but I cannot tell you the price. Nick cannot tell you the price. I would not pay much for it. I'm not the highest bidder for an item like that. So I'm not going to be the one to set the price with you, nor is I think Nick. Sounds like Peek's not going to be either. You just got to do some research, get a feel out of analogous cards, the closest you can find, and then set a number that you're comfortable with. I mean, a card like this, I might go kind of high buy it now or best offer, get a feel for what comes in. Fairly niche though, and a lot of people who collect that set might already have PSA sets underway. something you might run into an issue there. I don't know. Cool card, but like, yeah, it comes down to you set the price and see if someone's gonna pay it.
The only thing I'll add to that is from someone who has had to price low pop, no comp cards. Engage in the community that collects these and know the people who collect them. That's going to be a huge data point that you're going to need, because realistically, you can try and find comps. From my experience, you're not going to find anything. You're going to find guesstimates at best, and definitely don't throw it on auction. It's too niche of an item, I would think, because you could definitely take a bath on that for sure. But I would say, with a CGC 10, you're kind of double niche at that point. You're looking for a CGC 10 collector who's happy with that, who doesn't want a PSA 10 or a BGS 10. And then in addition, you have to find a buyer for that specific card that they wanted. And, it's one of those things that you can value it however you'd like. I mean, with low pop cards like that, I would definitely price them, like Dan said, like high as you can, as you're comfortable with, that somewhat makes sense, and then accept whatever your best offer is. But just know, just because it's a pop one does not mean that it's going to be extremely valuable, and you have to accept that and realize, like, where do I take my W, and what price does that look like that I'm happy with, like he said, because you may value that personally at I'll just throw out a number like $10,000, but if the market only is willing to pay like $3 and you're in the card for $500, like, you need to just accept, like, okay, this is a win for me, and this person's going to be happy buying it. So that's all I would say. Last thing you want to be is left with something that only you and 10 other people care about, and you don't get the price that you want and you feel disappointed. So being a little bit more objective in that type of sale has always helped me out when it comes to that.
And the next question comes from Big Steve Kells. Do you think the whole V-Star Universe subset will make it to Crown Zenith, or will some of it carry over to Scarlet and Violet? I am more recently getting a little bit more into the Japanese sets, but historically I've not been. The question I would ask, I don't know if these two gentlemen with me will be experts on the matter either, but like, historically, what has happened with EV Heroes into Evolving Skies, what made it, what didn't, what went elsewhere. I know EV Heroes wasn't like what do they call it, a high class set. So with VMAX Climax, like, historically speaking, is the answer that the whole subset would have made it in? I think generally speaking, they split up amongst a few. So like, I don't think my initial answer, slightly uneducated, moderately educated maybe, the whole subset won't make it in. And I think generally we don't even get every card somewhere. It's not like a certainty. There might be some that just stay Japanese exclusive. I could be wrong on that though. But yeah, that's how I'd go about speculating as to whether or not it will. But great thing is, time will tell. I mean, we'll find out in the coming months and years, I guess.
I mean, on this, as Dan said, like, I'm not as versed in when they actually release the cards in the newer sets, but realistically, like, with the way you're asking the question, I would buy V-Star Universe and just buy the Japanese set. The print quality is going to be better, and also you're guaranteed the cards. So it's like, I would go that route personally. I mean, if you are exclusively an English collector, there's not really a way to know. Pokemon seems to have been somewhat random in what they've done. And like Dan said, if you can look at the historical, like, as far as how they've released Japanese sets into English sets, you might find a pattern that you'll be able to follow, but maybe you don't. At that point, it's like, just buy V-Star Universe, because I know a lot of people are really excited for that, and they love the print quality, and Japanese has had a huge resurgence recently in the last few months. So I would recommend maybe just go out and buy V-Star and be happy with Japanese. But if you don't like that, yeah, try to find a pattern. If there's no pattern, then your guess is as good as ours, probably.
Yeah, I would I'm not sure on that. I would hope we do get everything in Crown Zenith. The one difference between, like, what you were saying, Dan, with the EV Heroes compared to Evolving Skies, that were, like, we still had the whole Sword and Shield block for them to put the rest of Eevee Hero cards into Fusion Strike, Brilliant Stars, so on and so forth. The cards that they missed from Eevee Heroes. But with V-Star Universe and Crown Zenith being the end of the Sword and Shield block, it'll be interesting to see how that changes. I'm not sure, but I was always under the assumption, again, I've never done any type of research on this, but I was always under the assumption that like your standard set releases and your specialty set releases, like the V-Star Universe, all of those cards were printed in English. I don't know if anyone in the chat can correct us. I'm not sure, honestly.
We don't know.
Yeah. That is all the rage right now, though. V-Star Universe.
We will speculate with you, but I have heard like I think Mason, Cardinal Gaming, which if no one subs to him, definitely do that for sure. He would probably have he would still speculate, but he would probably have a more educated, I think, opinion than probably all three of us. And I think one thing that he had mentioned in one of his recent videos is, I think he talked about V-Star Universe and how he wasn't sure if we were going to get all of them, or there was, I'd have to go back and watch it, but he gives a really good take on that. So I'd recommend that as a probably the better educated reference, since he's a lot more like ear to the ground, when it comes to that. I think, running a retail store and probably, knows that probably a little bit better. But speaking for myself, not both you guys, but I would think Mason is definitely a good, he usually doesn't say anything like super speculative. He usually has a little bit of data to back a lot of his stuff up.
So Hisoka, don't know why, but I want to know, old school Pokemon, have you ever seen Monty Python? Yes, I have. I watch it like every year around Christmas time with my family. It's a super cheesy movie, but I absolutely love that movie.
One of my roommates in college was really into that, so I watched it a handful of times in college. Not before, not since. Not really my cup of tea, but kind of funny here and there.
Same.
Just one comment I wanted to comment on by Between the Ropes. If PSA 9 Charizards are $30, people will stop submitting them and prices would rebound a bit. Not necessarily. If the 10s are high enough to justify, say grading is 15 or 18, what it currently is, and the PSA 10s are $120 and the raw cards are only 30, that will be enough of a premium. Again, you'll take an L individually on the 9s, but you'll win overall as long as you get a sufficient 10 rate. So 9s could really be beaten down pretty good if the 10s stay high enough. They kind of move in tandem to some extent. There's no fixed multiplier between a 9 and the 10. Every card varies. It depends on the 10 rate, things like that. But be careful with that thought that, there's not going to be like a floor at 30 just because people would lose money grading 9s. There is no floor. If too many of them get graded, if too many Zard UPCs get printed, as I said, and I'll continue to say, any card can be oversupplied to the demand that's there, and the floor is 0 on any of this stuff.
Yeah, one thing I did look up while we were talking about the Charizard UPC, it is available on Target right now. Just FYI. You can still buy it too.
And people were saying earlier, it's $100 on certain websites already. So don't buy it from Target for $120 plus tax. The website was mentioned earlier in chat. So scroll up in your live chat, and somebody's got $400 cases and $100 UPCs. That's the midpoint between wholesale cost and retail. I pay $80, retail's $120. That's dead in the middle. If I were to sell one for $100, shipping fees and all that, there's not much meat on the bone. They're not making much money on that. Maybe they pay significantly less than I do. They very well could pay $70. They're still not making a ton on that. But again, that's not a floor. If and when they print 5 waves of this, if they just hammer it down, Charizard UPC could go sub wholesale cost if things get really ugly. I don't think it will. I don't think they'll print that much, but it could. If it comes down to paying the bills, keeping the lights on, keeping payroll going, not bouncing payroll checks, LGSs will move. Look at what Magic is doing right now. Look, Magic Mason's made videos. I've seen Mason in the chat. He's in there right now. Things can and will sell below cost, wholesale cost, if things get bad enough.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be a good test to how organically interested the market is in new releases and modern, for sure. I mean, it's the premium product, and this is not a like cheap product to buy. You know, that's one thing I brought up in Basic Trainers live stream is we're talking about $120 box of Pokemon cards. You know, and you know, I know that we are all so engaged in this and you know, very, very involved. But, you know, you look at the average person, that's a lot of money to spend to open 8 packs, I think is how many were in there, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but I think it was 8 packs.
16, I think. Cards. But still a lot of money. 16
packs?
Yeah.
Still a ton.
It's a lot of packs and the playmat and the dice. There's a lot of other value in there. But 120, as you said, that's a lot of money. I do not know people in my day-to-day life that are just throwing 120 every week or even every month at something like Pokemon cards. There's a ton of them out there, clearly. 9.1 billion cards printed, gobbled up. All the things Evolving Skies is doing, all the things we talk about, like, it's impressive with how many I've got and how many I've been able to sell between 120 and 150 already. It's interesting.
Yeah, we had a conversation on Basic Trainers Live about that. And one of the points I brought up is, you know, obviously the boom happened. Everybody was buying everything. And, you know, I think a lot of people stayed, but also a lot of new money exited the hobby. And I don't know what print numbers are. Obviously, I don't think there's a way to even know that as of right now. But, you know, one thing that came to my mind is it that the print run is equal to the UPC, but there's just less buyers available to buy it all up at that price point? Because you think Celebrations UPC came out like literally peak hype, like everybody bought it, and new money bought it, old money bought it, like recent money bought it, you know, whatever it is. It makes me just question, like, long term, like, is it just that our buyer pool has shrunk and that's why they're still available at retail and retail just got the huge contracts to, like, you know, sell that? Or am I completely delusional and Pokemon's like you said, you know, we're double paying the electric bill this month. Let's print 1 million of these and call it a day. I think it could kind of go either way, but that's just kind of more the optimistic take, in my opinion, is that maybe the buyer pool that we had from 2020, 2021 is now, like, you know, maybe it's 30% less people, which now we're seeing that 30% extra product still sitting on shelves. So I don't know if that's maybe something that people have really talked about too much, but that's kind of where my mind went is are there enough people to buy the amount that they're printing? And did they expect the same amount of buyers as they did in 2021 when the last UPC came out? So maybe just something to think about more than agree or disagree with.
Yeah, that's a good point, I think. I do think this UPC was a lot easier to print, though, without having the metal cards. I think the metal cards was a big limiting factor for the Celebrations UPCs. But yeah, no, that is a good point about the number of people.
Well, you've also got to think too, you know, they replaced metal cards with a playmat and gold dice, and, like, you know, they made up the cost, probably not as much, but a little bit. So that was something, because I said the same thing. Maybe the metal cards were just, that's what limited the print run, but they also threw it. I mean, that playmat's like a pretty solid playmat. I mean, what are they selling for? $20 roughly. So it probably cost them a decent amount, that with the gold dice and, like, all of that. I mean, I say gold dice as in, like, you know, these aren't like 18 karat dice here, but, like, you know, it's definitely more expensive than, like, their traditional dice that they're putting in there. So, like, they definitely put the cost in it. I'm sure their margin was more on this, but even that being said, you know, I feel like they're probably close to equal, I would think, but I could be completely wrong. Again, complete speculation, you know, when it comes to that.
So the next question, Bacon and Hex, serious Q. Do you think the lipstick effect, behavioral economics, is underway in modern? I'm gonna need one of you to enlighten me on what that is.
I pulled it up on Wiki because I've heard of it, but I wasn't 100% up with what it was. So for everyone's benefit, the lipstick effect is the theory that when facing an economic crisis, consumers will be more willing to buy less costly luxury goods. Instead of buying expensive fur coats, for example, people will buy expensive lipstick. The underlying assumption is that consumers will buy luxury goods even if there's a crisis. So, yeah, it's like with the pandemic, it almost felt like we had the perfect storm of things. People were getting depressed, living in their houses, having to stay put, not being able to go on vacations. So they had like more money to spend, stimulus and all that. Like we don't have that situation now. But the theory is like people will treat themselves. They won't treat themselves as lavishly. Like what the dollar tiers is where I get kind of lost on this. What dollar tiers are they going to? Like the fur coat dollar tier, they're not going to spend thousands, but they'll spend a couple. I don't even know what expensive lipstick costs. $50, $100, $500. Like looking at Moonbreon, $1,000 card, $1,500 card, whatever it is, that feels closer to a fur coat price than a lipstick price to me. I don't know. I just get so lost in this question.
The right stuff, man. Come on.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I think that there is merit to it to some extent. I this is genuinely above my pay grade. I feel like I can't answer it satisfactorily. There's just too much assumptions being made and too much guesswork.
I mean, to take like just a general speculative shot at it, which is, again, we're not going to give you facts. We're going to give you opinions on this, but my thought is yes. Do I think it's underway? Absolutely. I think it's underway with a lot of things in society. And I don't even think that it necessarily goes away. I think it just increases and decreases depending on how, the economy's doing, et cetera. But, and I may be reaching a little bit here on your question, but you may be asking like, is it underway in modern? Is that what's driving modern right now? I don't think so. I think it's a part of it, but I think there's a lot of people who have a ton of organic interest in it. And I don't think they're quote unquote like, based on Dan's definition that he brought up on the wiki, like settling to buy not the fur coat when they go out and buy modern product, because there's still a ton of money being spent on modern. I mean, Moonbreon's a prime example, like you mentioned, like $1,000, that's the fur coat. That's beyond the fur coat, in my opinion. That's a lot of money to spend on a piece of, cardboard to take home and look at. But I think it's a part of it, but I think, and I've had this conversation a lot with people, publicly and privately, I think that modern right now is absolutely on fire and is a rocket ship. I've not seen this much interest in modern products since I've been in the hobby. And I had a lot of doubts being a vintage person, for a long time and just thinking like there's no fundamentals, like here's a one-off. And when you get enough one-offs or what you consider asterisks, you start seeing a trend. And then you have to pretty much eliminate it being a one-off. And that's how I feel about modern. I feel like people are really enjoying the product and buying the product and spending the money at prices that, some people think are ridiculous. I've been guilty of that myself. So I don't necessarily think that it's them just settling and buying something different. I think there's just a ton of organic interest in modern. And they're really doing a pretty decent job, especially this last set, the ones upcoming, the one before that, like they're really printing like amazing art and they're making chases. And it's, I think Pokemon is just navigating the market as they always have. And timing wise, I think people are ready to go back and buy Pokemon cards right now versus the pandemic where it was all flippers. I think people are happy to see stuff on the shelf, happy to pick up booster boxes for retail, happy to see Pokemon Center not get botted to oblivion every single time something gets, put up there. That's my take on that.
Yeah. I don't think it's so much as people settling to buy modern. I think it's more so that modern is the talk of the town right now. Everyone's talking about modern. Nobody talks about vintage anymore. So because of that, more people are getting into modern, where that's what everyone's talking about. I kind of think it's more to do with that. And plus, modern's a lot more accessible than WotC, EX era, whatever. anyone, well, maybe not anyone, but most people can go out and buy a box of a modern booster box, where maybe not the majority of people can't go out and buy a WotC booster box, EX booster box, Diamond and Pearl, XY, Sun and Moon even. So I think it has to do with more of that than anything else.
So I did have this conversation on stream maybe a few weeks ago, and that was one thing that I referenced Swolepoke. Shout out Jeremy, he's awesome guy. I had him on my collector showcase series, and he brought up something that was really interesting that kind of changed the way that I think about these waves of interest. Is he talked about how really when it comes to like super rare items, they end up pricing themselves out of the market, and people search for that new chase, that new affordable chase. And what I did is I kind of extrapolated that a little bit a few weeks ago, talking about vintage, how it really is a very like expensive cost of entry in order to get that. I mean, like you said, people aren't just going out and buying casual like $10,000 booster boxes. Like it's just not something that's happening, but they enjoy Pokemon. So I think that, you know, a ton of niches in our market have been priced out of like the normal consumer price point. You know, you look at autos are crazy right now. You look at vintage for the most part. I mean, yeah, the prices have dropped, but there's still, you know, you talk about even people spending $500 on a card. That's a lot of money for a casual consumer. So I think all of the price hikes that we've seen and a lot of the vintage product has driven a lot of people to modern. And once they've gotten into it, they enjoy it as they should. And they've just been buying it more and more and more because it's affordable. So yeah, I completely agree with you. But that was one thing that he had mentioned, that everyone's always looking for the next, I guess, I don't want to call it like a stonk per se, but like the next chase, the next hit, right? You know, that's what they're searching for. And Moonbreon has become that. And I think it's, at first I had my doubts about it selling for the prices that it is. But again, like I mentioned, you can have one-offs to a certain extent until it becomes a pattern and a trend. And I think it's become a trend as far as what that card sells for. And I almost think that consumers who weren't able to afford vintage product have almost like created their own price hike in modern product because there's so much demand for it now. But again, speculation all day, but that's just kind of what I've been thinking about a lot when it comes to vintage compared to modern, and kind of what's driving that.
I want to loop back to like the whole, does doing business in this now take away from your collector side of it? One thing that for me, like every day I'm packing and shipping orders, vintage, modern alike. I mean, we got $1,000 Moonbreons, we got $250 Evolving Skies, we got $100, $200, $300 PSA 9 WotC First Edition Hollows. These prices are so much more massive than 8 years ago when I got into the hobby. I'm priced out as a collector. I don't know who all these people are and where all their money comes from, but I don't have it. I don't have this much money to allocate to just sit on my shelf and be like collection pieces that I just hold on to forever. I'm not like had I entered, I could find value. If I were to start today, that's a common question we get. There would be things that I'd find. There's value out there. I was a PSA 9 collector when I started. Now it's more like LP, near mint, binder copies. But part of like what's taken away some of the collector side of it for me is just the prices. Like it's great, it's strong, it's healthy, it's great for the future. But like me personally, the market just values almost everything more than I do, wholesale, like universally. It's fascinating how high, how healthy, how strong the prices are across the board. That's vintage, that's modern, that's everywhere in between, in my opinion.
Well, a lot of the time too, like a lot of people will bring up, I mean, look at the marketplaces we have today. Whatnot, you know, it completely changed the game. And I have this conversation with Basic Trainer a lot too, is if you're a Whatnot streamer and you're really trying to make, you know, consistent money, are you going to do one big box break and make kind of, I guess, what you call like one score? Or are you going to continuously wholesale buy modern and have a ton of streams consistently in order to open product and keep your business going? So I think, you know, definitely the business mindset as far as where I don't even want to call it necessarily quick money, but the consistent money comes in is always going to be modern, at least in today's market. So that also drives a lot of interest because that's what everybody's pumping, because that's what they're buying and that's what they can afford to buy. and the occasional peppered in crazy expensive vintage box. So yeah, completely agree.
Next question comes from Pokey Martin. The price difference between English Trainer Gallery raw cards and PSA 10s is about 15 to 20x on most cards. Thoughts? I'm not grading any of those. I don't know what the PSA 10 rates are. Even if they're low, that feels pretty crazy to me. These cards are pretty easy to pull, mass pull rates. Yeah, we're still in a place where grading is expensive. In the coming months, in the coming years, grading will get cheaper and it will get faster, at least for like on a per cost basis. 15 and 18 are outperforming my expectations. When 18 was happening, I did not expect to get them back before the end of the year. I have all my 18s back now from July. I'm very happy with that. But like what that is going to do to cards like PSA 10 trainer galleries, it's going to be downward pressure. Most PSA 10 trainer galleries were graded fairly expensive and they were graded on fairly longer turnaround times. I bet in the coming few months, several months, we will see sub 15. We will see 12. We may see 10. We may see 9. I still am banking against seeing 10 or 9, but we could. If and when we do, if and when 9, 10, 12 is turning around in 3 to 4 months, that's downward pressure on cards like that. So I think that gap will narrow. That's my take on those cards specifically and other analogous cards.
Yeah, I mean, you said it perfectly. I mean, when you look at PSA's turnaround time, I've been absolutely shocked that they've been able to turn these cards around this quickly. I mean, I was watching Old Card Shop, Josh, his live stream earlier was doing a PSA return for a $15 sub. I mean, it's just crazy to think that he already has it back. I think mine are still in grading at this point. And he had a ton of cards that he submitted. He lives in California, so I don't know if that's like the life hack when it comes to the location hack when it comes to that. But it's that can only drive things down. If you can turn them quicker, there's less time in order to make those max profits. So I would imagine that 15 to 20x, I mean, already feels like a lot. I don't know if you guys feel that way, but like 20x on a card raw. I mean, I guess if you're buying a $5 card and you're turning for 100, I know people have been making those plays for years, but it's kind of crazy that still happens in today's market. But yeah, absolutely. I think the margins are going to be lessened because of the turnaround time of grading, because there's going to be more supply and there's going to be more people who can do that versus the people who, hey, a special opens up, or, they bet on a 15, 20x and they submitted a, I guess I'll call it a old school $50 tier, which came back a lot quicker than an $18 tier or a 15, or I think they were at 20, whatever it was. So yeah, I think downward pressure is definitely it. Which, by the way, I just want to highlight this, everybody in chat and you guys, 2 subs away from 1,000 subs right now, guys. We are very close here. I so want you guys to hit 1,000 tonight. Like that's going to be amazing. So even if you drop the $9.99 because I said that after 1,000, whatever, you at least hit the goal. So
when you talk about the number goes backwards.
Hey, where are the alt accounts at, guys? Come on. Where's your foreign Gmail that you need to
go grab your significant other's phone. Go grab your parents' phone. Go grab someone else's in the house has a phone that has a YouTube logged in. Hit that sub button.
Just nudge your significant other and just be like, babe, PokeFlipz is almost 1,000. Like, give me your phone.
It just went down one. I can see the live count. It just went down one.
Whoops. Somebody's wife heard us. My bad.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just wanted to shout that out after that answer because that's so awesome. You guys are so close right now.
I think you guys covered that one pretty well. I was just gonna basically say the exact same things you guys said. Pricing will definitely come down on those cards as PSA gets cards returned, lowers their pricing. Most of those cards have pretty good quality control. Biggest thing is the centering. Centering on those cards have been decent. I haven't graded any of them myself, but on the English side, the centering's decent on those, so I think those are fairly easy 10s.
And I've noticed that. I've seen a lot of them come through. I mean, it's rare that I see an under 10, when it comes to those. So even posted on eBay.
Yeah, definitely. Mertz Collectibles, what are your guys' thoughts on what's going on with Hasbro and Magic? I have not been following that. I have no idea. This past week has just been, I saw a bunch of videos about Magic and Hasbro and all that stuff. I haven't watched any of them, but yeah. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
I have followed it to a certain extent because I find it interesting because they bring in the stock price of Hasbro. So I'm like, I'll click, let's check this out. I think it's hard to say because I can only draw from my own experience, which is Bandai. And it seems like it's a little bit of a shotgun in sports mentality, meaning that they're throwing everything at the wall and just releasing so many different subsets, like actual releases, not just like us as collectors saying like, we want these subsets. Like there's so many different products. And I think that, this is a case with any retail business, even like if you have too many SKUs, you don't really have like a certain identity, I guess. And I feel like that from what I've ingested. Again, there's probably Magic people watching the stream, but oh wait, hold on. 1,002 is what I see on the YouTube stream right now. Congratulations, guys. You hit 1,000. That's amazing.
I had to adjust it.
For you guys.
I knew it was going to happen. We were going to hit 1,000 and it was going to make the extra character and it was going to like cut off. So it was like, instead we had 0.00 subscribers for a minute there.
Dude, fire emojis in the chat for these guys. So well deserved. So happy for you guys. That's like, I'm so happy for you. You guys both deserve it like so much with what you've been putting out.
Well, thank you. Yeah, now
appreciate that.
Anyone not watching this live is going to have to deal with ads every 30 seconds now, so me and Dan can make that ad revenue.
That's right. Every 15 seconds.
You guys played
There's
yourselves.
There's going to be an old school Pokemon website ad. Old school Pokemon he's prepped his ad. He's already ready. He's about to throw it on his own video. No, I just think that from what I've gathered and ingested, and like I mentioned, like there's probably some Magic people in here that can speak to this so much better than I can. But just from the probably 30% really of content ingestion as far as what's out there on this, I think they're sort of losing their identity right now and trying to. It's a bit pretentious, like we are Magic, and we are Magic the Gathering. We started this, and I think that it kind of goes with. The old school business motto is like complacency is the death of motivation. And it seems like they're not really trying to create anything, or they're not trying to, it's kind of goes back to our Gold Star alt art conversation, is that unless you're doing something new and you're not saturating your own base, you can succeed. But it seems like that's what's happening is there's a lot of saturation of product. It's hard to get into it. And Magic players tend to be, actually, I'm not going to say that generally, but a lot of people who are into Magic really hardcore are older. So like you have to do something to garner to a new generation of people because you can't count on that customer base to stay with you for the lifetime. So it just seems like they're ignoring the very obvious positive strategies that other TCGs are doing because they're Magic. So I that's what I think about it. Yeah, I just think there needs to be definitely some adjustment on their end because even as someone who's into multiple TCGs, Magic has never shown up on my radar because it's just not something that it has no identity to me. It's just Magic. It's just that thing that I'm not into. So, Dan, I know you've had some Magic purchases and stuff, so you may be able to speak a little bit better to that than I will. But that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, I've picked up a couple random beta and alpha cards, CGC, PSA graded, very, very minimal amounts, less than 10 I have, single digit. Some random arts that were nostalgic to me to some extent. My cousins when I was younger, mid-90s, late 90s, I remember seeing some cards. And they were probably whiteboarder ones that my cousins had that I just ended up picking up in beta or alpha. But anyways, very, very interesting. I'm not watching it like super closely, but I do watch. I watch maybe one Rudy video a week. He pumps out a lot of content. It just doesn't do it for me. Maybe one a week, 3 a month, something along those lines. I've been watching all his videos on the Hasbro thing because it's a fascinating case study on where we could find ourselves in 10 or 20 years. Who knows? If and when, I've talked about it many times, if and when Pokemon needs to, if they feel they need to, serialized cards are in their back pocket. Very close reprints of... It's a very different dynamic, though. Like, what exactly they can and can't do, it's hard to say. Pokemon doesn't have the history of the reserve list. I saw some of the screenshots Rudy put in his, I think it was his most recent video, higher ups at Wizards a few years back saying we will never print regulation sized cards, not even with alternate backs. So they're directly lying. Pokemon has no reserve list. Pokemon has made no such statements. One additional dynamic that might come in to play legality wise, Pokemon might not have the ability to reprint even with a collector's back, like a base set first edition Charizard. They might not be able to do that because that was WotC and they are Nintendo Pokemon now. I think they could, though, or at least fairly closely, because they did do evolutions. They did do the 24 karat gold Pikachu card using the base set artwork. They are rehashing some of those things. But yeah, it's a little bit scary what's going on with them. It's a little bit scary to see what... Again, it wouldn't be to the same extent. It wouldn't be as bad because they don't have the reserve list. They haven't made these statements, but it still could get kind of bad. It would, imagine a Rayquaza Gold Star reprint numbered to 100. Imagine right out of the gate seeing a card surpassing the value of a card that you may own with way more history, and how would that make you feel? And it is a scary thought, and it could be in our future. Not trying to like instill fear and FUD and all that stuff, but it could go there, certainly, if things were to get rocky, as they seemingly are with Magic. So I'm definitely watching along.
Well, and also, like you said, you know, they directly lied and released product anyway. That screams two things to me: desperation and saturation, which can absolutely kill your product, because those are the two things you don't want. You don't want to just throw random $1,000 boxes just because your margins suck on the other stuff, and you're like, we're going to release a premium product and make up for this. You know, it's reactive instead of proactive, and I feel like Pokemon has been less than reactive. I don't know if you guys feel differently than that, but it doesn't seem like they really have reacted to the market near as much as, like, you know, Magic has. It seems like they have their strategy that's proven for the 20 some odd years that they've been doing this, and they for the most part, with minor adjustments, stay the course and are proactive in what they're doing. But I don't know if Nick has any comments after all of that. I know you had to step away from the prison cell according to the chat, but
I've been cracking up over those comments. No, I had to step out and grab a drink. I was dying of thirst, but yeah, I couldn't say. I missed most of that. Sorry. I'll go back and rewatch it and let you guys know my thoughts.
It's all good. We just need to go ahead and plug the Raid Shadow Legends ad that is now active. That's who brought you this video, and I was cracking up Mason. He's like, I can't wait for the Raid Shadow Legends. Like, it's the best.
I'm trying to get caught up. We're within like 10 or 12 minutes of chat.
One thing while you get caught up, Mike Z, I don't know if he's still in here. He asked about the no damage Ninetales that were on eBay, the CGC copies. I did not buy any of those. There were, for those of you who don't know, someone listed 3 CGC no damage Ninetales on eBay. 2 8s and 1 7. They were all decently priced. They were a little bit high. Like the 8s were like $22.50. I value those like $17.50, so they were a little bit high, but I think we could have come to a deal on those. I was tempted to buy all 3 of them, but at the same time, I was able to make a deal on some booster packs that I needed for my personal collection, and I'm going to be doing a video on those probably next week, early next week. I'll show those in a video, so I won't reveal it just yet, but I didn't buy the no damage Ninetales, but I did buy something just as cool, maybe a little bit crazy.
See, now you have me intrigued because from you saying something just as cool as a no damage Ninetales, that's how you plug a video right there. Because I don't know what that would be for you. But to be fair, you did not mention that would be something you would buy if you had 50 grand handed to you. So the judgment's there. You're happy with the collection as is. He's not actually buying them. No, I'm just kidding.
Mason asks, can we get Nick a more comfy chair with the ad revenue? To get a computer chair with the ad revenue we're going to pull in, it might be a decade away, especially since it's going to be a 50-50 split, not all for him. But 10 years from now, we will get Nick that new chair.
Knowing Dan, though, he will take a look at your chair, figure out a way to optimize it, fix it. He's going to treat it like a washer dryer. He's going to add hydraulics to it. The engineer brain's going to kick in. I actually didn't even see your chair, but I just saw somebody was like, "You're in prison," and I just cracked up. I was like, "That's hilarious."
It's like a dining room table chair. Nice wooden chair, no cushion.
Keeping the margins high, guys. That's what's happening. True businessman in the hobby right now.
Oh yes. To be fair though, I'm only down here to record these podcasts. This is the only time I'm down here. I'm basically in a closet right now, filled with boxes. My actual computer chair is very, very comfy, and I did just buy a nice small stool for my office, so that way I can sit down while pulling TCG player orders. That's been a game changer.
Yeah, my goal is to have one of the hydraulic desks that can be standing or sitting. One of my old roommates had that, and I was like, I used to think it was so over the top and ridiculous, and I'm like, man, from someone who works at home, all I wish I could do is just stand up and work at a computer, like, because I just sit the whole time. So eventually, I just have to pass the 300 sub mark, guys, and then I'll be happy. Then I'll buy it. I'll be like, it's justified. There's enough fake accounts following me. I'm ready to make it happen.
There we go.
We gotta get your series 2 going that we're all anxiously awaiting. Season 2.
Season 2? Yes.
I did talk to Nick a little bit about that prior to us going live. That's something that I was telling him. I work from home. My year is for the most part going to be done at the end of November. So it's coming, guys. I'm shooting for January. So for anybody who's asked me, usually people are like, "We need a season 2." That's about the only comments I get on my videos now. Yeah, it's on its way. I promise. I'm working through it and just want to make the time. But I think mid-January is probably when that's going to launch. It's hard because there's so many just amazing people to talk to. It's like, if I talk to all of them, I'd never stop doing the series, which some people might want. But I'd like to limit, to 10 to 15 episodes tops, for this next one. But it's on its way. I promise.
Looking forward to it for sure. And I just linked his YouTube and Instagram as I had someone asking in the chat, and I will remember to add those to the description when we're done. I forgot about it on the front end. We did get a new question from Between the Ropes. Are you expecting higher general interest in Ho-Oh with Lugia currently getting lots of attention? Could be. I mean, they kind of pair together. They're both that crystal version era, but it's hard to say. They're really nostalgic to me. They're both some of my favorites, but I don't think necessarily Lugia getting a hit card is gonna like stonk all of Ho-Ohs, or might not necessarily mean that we'll even get a Ho-Oh in this block, because Pokemon is big on like having a trio and just doing 2 of them. They're kind of a duo. I could see them just like doing one of the duo, and okay, that's good.
Yeah, I'm going to say no, for sure. This isn't like Moltres, Zapdos, and Articuno. Like, Lugia is its own thing. So I don't see that impacting Ho-Oh at all. I think Lugia stands out and he's not on par with Charizard, but like in the community, like just as recognizable, when it comes to that for people who are engaged. Ho-Oh, I don't see that happening at all. I don't think it'll make any difference.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, Peek. I don't put Lugia or Ho-Oh in the same group I do Lugia. Lugia definitely way better. Where with the legendary birds, like you said, you kind of think of, when you think of the birds, you think of all three of them: Zapdos, Moltres, and Articuno. But with Lugia, I don't really think of Ho-Oh. The thing with Silver Tempest, though, and being a Lugia set, I don't know if that'll make people more interested in Lugia. Me personally, I really wasn't a fan of the Ultra Rare, the V-Star, or the Alt Art. I thought those artworks were pretty terrible. I thought the best Lugia artwork in Silver Tempest was just the basic Full Art V. That was the best artwork in my opinion. But even that one was just kind of a meh for me. So it'll be interesting to see if there is any more interest in Lugia cards because of Silver Tempest, or if it'll just be more business as usual.
I would hope so. I mean, I think Lugia is such an epic Pokemon. Like, it's such a cool Pokemon and with amazing art, outside of even the Crystal Lugia. And yeah, I'm kind of ready for something like that to happen. I'm ready for another Pokemon to really take some limelight that hasn't, I guess, I don't want to say stalked as much because Crystal Lugia is like crazy expensive, but like I want a new face. Like I'm ready to get that refreshment of like a non-Charizard chase at this point. Yeah. Anyway.
Takibana asks, do you think there's a chance we'll ever see a Suicune set? Also, congrats on 1K. Appreciate that. Suicune, or as I used to say when I was younger, Suicine.
Suicine.
I'm a big fan.
Same way.
Like Crystal and Yellow were my two games that I really put tons of hours into growing up, and Crystal's got the Suicine Suicune right on the front. So really nostalgic Pokemon for me. He absolutely could. I think he's certainly not S tier like Pikachu, Charizard, Lugia maybe being an A tier, Ho-Oh maybe coming in as a B. Like maybe in the Ho-Oh range would be Suicune, I think. Could have a standalone set, or not really a standalone set, but like could be the feature of a set, could be the ETBR. I can absolutely see that. I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I don't think so. That'd be a big gamble on their part to push something like that. I feel like they would have to have something like a Moonbryon like set up for them to like say, hey, people are going crazy for this. Let's release a set. I mean, Suicune, Suicine is the correct pronunciation for everyone watching.
Yeah.
According to me and Dan, he's the only other person I've met that pronounced it that way his whole life, and I'm the same way.
Brad in the chat said that all his friends when he was younger said it that way.
Okay, we're not alone. I love
We're not alone.
I'm fine. Weirdos over there. giving me a hard time for saying
Etney.
Yeah.
Etney.
You said Etney for like Entei?
Yeah, yep.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah, Suicide is how I said it like my whole life. But no, I don't see them basing that around Suicune. I just feel like there's so many other options to do that around versus him. So, one thing I would love to see if you want to have like a random Pokemon, I'd love a Ditto set and just have a ton of random arts of him like being other Pokemon. That would actually be pretty cool. Like I doubt it would like stalk or be crazy, but like having a bunch of random arts of like Ditto copy Pokemon would actually be pretty cool. So that's the one that I'll throw at you. Like, yeah, outside of like these crazy legendaries, like a Ditto set would be pretty awesome. That would be what I'd vote for.
Yeah, possibly in the future, maybe. That if I was in charge of Pokemon, I don't think that would be my first choice to have a set revolve around Suicune. I think there's a lot more other options that would be cooler in my opinion, but I'm not a big Suicune fan anyway, so maybe that's why I'm saying that. But maybe like Dan said, ETB art, I think that would be more doable than like a set, but who knows, honestly.
And with that, we're fully caught up in chat. We have a little over 15 minutes left that we're going to go. Feel free to leave your questions. I can't guarantee if we get like flooded with them that we're going to get to all of them, but we'll do our best to keep up these last 15 minutes. I don't know if you, Colt, or Nick have any topics you wanted to bring up while we've got a little bit of breathing room.
You guys are 1,000 subs, so that's cool.
That's
I'll
exciting.
bring that up again. So here's a question for both of you guys. How long have you been doing the podcast now?
It'll be we're like a little over a year and a half. We'll be 2 years in March, I believe, of 2023, right?
I want to say March is when we started it.
March of 2021.
Did you expect it to take less time or more time than right now since you've achieved 1,000?
Oh, this channel specifically has been around for less time than that. We started the podcast originally on both of our channels, or we alternated the channel. I forget what we even did. I think we did it just on both channels.
I remember watching the
channels, and then we alternated, and then we switched over to this channel.
So those were the true 480p days.
Yeah.
I remember watching those, and it was so great. I think I watched like episode 1 through 5 or something, just to listen to it. So
it looks like our channel is 7 months old, so we must have created this. Oh yeah, I think we actually created this about at the anniversary. I think we created it at like our 1 year. That's right. Our 1 year episode was on this channel, or like shortly after. I think one interesting thing that this channel did was that I was worried we were really going to sacrifice a lot of early views, but we were getting a couple thousand views, high 1,000, low 2,000 views per episode, I think, on our own channels. And then when we transitioned to here, the views were there. Like we had a ton of subs out of the gate. Our growth rate, I mean, our first couple months, I think we had a few hundred, couple hundred subs. And then we kind of like stagnated. I think our month, like today we've added 14. Our 28 days before today, we added like 30. Like our growth has been really, really slow the last little bit, but it's good to see that like everyone came over and like the views are there. So I don't know how much of it is like they're 3-hour episodes and some people just take 5 times, 10 times to watch them. So maybe it's not 2,000 people watching. Maybe it's just like 500 people watching 4 times each on average.
The counter's 2,000, so it is what it is.
But in either case, like I'm happy with how 7 months to get to 1,000 feels reasonable enough. I didn't really have any set expectations. My main thing were the views. I was hoping the views wouldn't like drop off. I was hoping a lot of people wouldn't make the transition and follow us, but it seems like they did. So that was good to see.
Yeah,
so
that was definitely good. I was
or go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say it's funny to think about us starting the podcast, like originally starting it, and where we are today. I remember, I'm sure you do too, Dan. When we were originally talking about starting the podcast, we both said let's do once a month, and now we're doing twice a month. And I think that's perfect for us. And then our original timeline for the podcast in terms of length was between an hour and an hour and a half. And I think that might have lasted like 1 episode. And then the others have been always 3 hours plus.
So Nick.
So
good. I see the question about the Quaxley evolution, and I don't know if that's what you're bringing up, Dan, but I would love to hear the live reaction. But really quick, Nick, do you think you'd be able to get here if you had gone with your number 1 or number 2 or number 3 choice to do a podcast with and not ended up with Dan?
Yeah, way down on the list.
I think Dan definitely a lot more fun to do the podcast with. Sorry, James.
I had to throw it out there.
Yeah. So Mertz asks if we have the watch hours already to get the monetization. Last I looked, I think we have like 20 or 25,000 watch hours. So I think on my own personal channel, subscribers came first and watch hours came second, but it was pretty close. I think there's a lot of people who the watch hours are the hurdle, but for us, not surprising, the nature of this content, we have well over many multiples of what we needed for the watch hours. So commercials are ads are coming at you starting tomorrow.
On you, man. Yeah, because I've only got like 250 subs or something, and I think I've got like 2,800 watch hours. So I was like, yeah, you guys have got to be like through the roof for the amount of views and like how long you guys go. Because I cut mine off at like an hour and a half almost every video. So
Yeah. So we had a question from Jordan Palomera. What Pokemon deserves an alt art that hasn't had one yet? No, Quaxley, Dan. I absolutely would have said Quaxley. So he's got me. I feel like if I answer this question, I'm gonna pick one who's like already gotten one. I'm so out of tune with the absolute like newest sets. Let me just go for it though. Let me think of someone. I'm definitely gonna pick someone who already has one. I'm looking at the boxes. I'm trying to find inspiration for someone to pick.
Charmander. Charmander.
I was gonna say Squirtle.
Charmander would be cool.
He definitely deserves an alt art.
Gengar didn't get an alt art, did he?
Pokemon, your favorite, yeah, Gengar definitely got an alt art. So your
oh, he did,
Pokemon
yeah.
Squirtle,
I can picture it. That's right.
And Dan's is Charmander.
Yep. Is yours Bulbasaur?
No. Who picks grass? Seriously? Those are probably the people who lose the world championships. What are you talking about?
Mason says Gengar has a trainer gallery.
Gengar is an alt art in Fusion Strike.
Yeah, he
has the one with his tongue out.
Like
Yeah.
You're really slacking over there.
Mason, I was hyping you up earlier. What are you doing? Come on. What's going on? So you said Squirtle.
More from you, Mason.
Dan, are you going Charmander?
Charmander would be cool. It would be cool if they would start doing some like non-final evolution ones.
Yeah, I don't know if because I was gonna go with starters, so I don't know if I can really. Chansey, maybe. I've always loved Chansey arts, but maybe. Nick's not feeling it, but you know.
Not a big fan of Chansey. Not a big.
I don't know. I've always thought Chansey was an awesome Pokemon, but or maybe a Snorlax. Does Snorlax have an alt art? I don't know. Maybe
Snorlax.
I'd say Snorlax or Chansey.
Snorlax would
is
be
always
really
like
cool.
Such an awesome Pokemon. I love the Domino's Pizza like promo of him, so I'd love to see him like in an alt art, like eating and inhaling like food at like a market or something. Like it'd be cool if they made an alt art that kind of combined with the Machamp alt art, to where he's in that market like eating everything, and that's why Machamp's running or something. Like connect the arts. That would be pretty cool. But yeah, that's what I would go with.
Yeah, so next question comes from Gerald. Have you seen the Quaxley evolution? I have. When it was spoiled, when it was leaked, whatever, I was tagged multiple times in Discord, and it just further strengthens my love for Quaxley. You do not evolve Quaxley. I mean, when you are given such a gift of an incredible species, you don't tamper with it. You don't evolve it. And that just further, like, nobody's going to evolve Quaxley. So he's even better now.
He's the next Pikachu. You just don't evolve him. It doesn't happen.
Yeah. Next serious question. Speaking of the legendary beast, what are your thoughts on the Suicune, Entei, Raikou alt arts supposedly in CT? If you have seen any leaks, I have not seen any leaks personally. Or no, wait, no, maybe I did. I think I did see those in Discord. A lot of the leaks that I saw were cool. I actually had forgotten that I'd seen them, but I kind of do remember Entei had a volcano going on behind him. Raikou was, I think, running with some lightning coming off of him. They look pretty cool. Easy to please, though, for sure.
I had not seen any of these.
I haven't seen them.
I'm not in that super secret Discord.
Not just in that one. They posted them all over Oak's Discord, too, I believe.
I'm just not in Discord. I am very anti-Discord.
So Nick, this was in the $10 a month Pokenomics Discord, which I know you're getting ready to join soon. I'm sure.
Any day now. Any day now.
Any day now. No, I think the legendary dogs are awesome. I think it's cool that they keep them relevant. But I haven't seen anything at all. Dan, did you see Pokemon DNA's question at the bottom of the chat?
Yeah, we'll get to it before we wrap up. Let's try to go through some of these fairly quickly. Between the ropes, can you each please pick a most underrated card from Sword Shield? I did not stay up enough from on all of them. Honestly, I did not open hardly any Sword and Shield sets. I was just selling them sealed, and I have not opened Silver Tempest. I did not open Lost Origin. At some point, I'll go back and catch up, but not now.
There's a Pikachu card that I pulled that was really amazing art. I can't remember what it looks like, and I'm not going to look at my cabinet so we don't have enough time. But there's a Pikachu card in there that I really, really enjoyed. I know that's very vague, but I can't remember exactly. He's sitting down, maybe eating apples or something. I can't remember, but that was a super amazing art. And I immediately thought of Professor Oak, YouTube, by the way, not the Professor Oak from the anime. That just looks super sick. And I was like, man, if this was in a holo, this would be such a cool card to have. So I would say that they had a missed opportunity with a Pikachu holo with that one.
That's a tough one. I would say I would say I would probably say the Evolutions, the Sword and Shield promos that came out in the Evolution boxes. Those boxes did get a reprint recently, but they're still really good arts. They weren't printed into oblivion, and you can still pick those cards up, raw copies, for $20-$25. So I would go with those. I think the the standard set alt arts they were kind of sort of underrated for a little while, but now there's a lot more awareness to them. Pricing semi recently went way up on a lot of those cards, so I don't think the set alt arts are underrated necessarily, but I think those Sword and Shield promos, I really like those cards too, so maybe that one.
Mertz Collectibles asks, Dan, how do you stay motivated pumping out consistent videos? Do you see it as a significant part of your business strategy and force yourself to pump content out even when you don't feel like it? Absolutely not. All the content I've been making I enjoy thoroughly. My schedule has shifted some over the past year and a half. I was doing 2 or 3 videos a week. I was enjoying doing 2 or 3 videos a week. It got to where I shifted to 1 video and a live. I'm actually adding in a little bit extra now. I'm doing a short per week. So it's been dynamic, but I like sticking with a schedule. There's times where I've never felt like I'm making so much. I still have a backlog of maybe 20 videos, ideas I want to do. If and when that ever gets too low, if and when I ever feel like I'm making a video to make a video, I'll slow it down for sure. But I've not nearly gotten to that point yet, personally.
Why didn't you ask me this question?
Nick clearly cannot stay motivated pumping out content, and he does not force himself to. He will just abandon his YouTube channel.
Nick won't invest in the chair to make the content, so I think that's all you need to know.
I think it is great for business, though. I think it's great for business, getting people reaching out for consignments, collection buys, things like that. It's really big. So I consider it a key part of my business strategy, building this further. The scalability of content is awesome, too. That's something I'm going to do a video on at some point in the coming months. I think we had a bunch of questions pop in. Let's see if we can rapid fire some of these before we have to cut. I should be getting the DNAs soon. Yeah. Where'd it go? I just skipped. Can you tell us why DBZ Judge promos and Pokemon trophy cards, specifically Tropical Wind, are bad buys? I covered the trophy cards an hour or two hours ago, whenever it was. That's all I've got on those. The other ones seem decent. Tropical Wind is actually one of the cards on my bucket list of sorts to own someday that I never have.
So DNA is basically saying everything that I want, which is pretty funny.
Why are all Colts taste terrible?
So DNA, DBZ Judge promos. It's Dragon Ball Super Judge promos. So incorrect. Those are great buys. Everyone should buy them at the highest price possible, for sure. No, Tropical Wind is awesome. I think that card's going to be like on season like 100 of Pawn Stars at some point. Like the 99 Wind is like the way to go. But I just thought that I called him a monster in chat. It's just a really funny troll question that he asked.
Swag Daddy asks, how many Pokemon Squishmallows are you buying? I might buy a couple for my kids, actually, but I'm not going to go as heavy into Squishmallows as I am into Sitting Cuties, personally. Either of you have anything to add on Squishmallows, or not really?
You're the only crazy one buying
no shelves with
cuties, other stuff.
Cam actually has a good question
the only
here.
thing sitting in mine is me.
Cam asks, do you guys agree that uncut sheets from WotC era that were taken from the factory are treated differently than uncut sheets from the more modern era? If so, why do you think that is? I think the only valid uncut sheet out there, generally speaking, is the KB Toys Fossil sheet promotion. Every KB Toy store in the country received one that they gave away back in 99, 2000, whatever year it was. Probably 2000 it would have been. I feel like I want to make a video at some point on saved from the shredder type items. I'm generally not a huge fan, but one exclusion that I've kind of made that I've collected some of are uncut sheets. So being a bit hypocritical on some of my overall takes, like I'm not a huge fan of 4-position only. I'm not a fan of like match print cards, things like that. Again, I might make a standalone video at some point, but it's kind of a weird thing. Like Rusty, a close friend, is a guy who like was the source for a lot of that, getting it from guys that worked at WotC that in a lot of ways were not supposed to take that product. And it's a weird thing. I don't even think it's gray area when a lot of it happens. A lot of it is just like theft that is against company policy. So it's a weird thing. It's a really weird thing. Even like some people say, oh, the company was throwing it away. I used to work at a company that threw a lot of stuff away. And if you were dumpster diving, and some of that stuff had some amount of value probably to other people, you would lose your job and you would maybe be pursued criminally if and when you dumpster dove. And especially some of the shredded cards that are being sent. This is getting into different things. Cam asked about sheets specifically, but it all has just like an air of negativity around it because it is the source of it. The primary source of it is theft. So why is a fossil one that, like, I have a non-hollow rare one. I have a PCD theme deck sheet. Rusty actually made a video recently public that he sent to me years ago that I bought several sheets from him. I think some amount of it is just time. And then another part of it is the company. Wizards of the Coast no longer handles Pokemon. So it's less taboo because it's so much further removed, is my main opinion on that.
Yeah, I would completely agree. I think you touched on that perfectly. I mean, it's no different than like, why do people value WotC booster boxes more than modern booster boxes? Like it's the history, but also like even more complex than that because they're uncut sheets. It's like how did they get out? They're so much more probably rare than the modern ones. I don't follow that market as much or see how many are posted, but yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's mainly the history and the vintageness, if that's a word, of it, that people want that.
Yeah, I think the same. I think it's the WotC versus Nintendo. It's a different company, so people don't care as much. Plus, it's a lot longer ago. One interesting thing though that I thought of while listening to this question, you really don't see many modern sheets. Like I don't think I've I don't follow them regularly, but I don't think I've ever seen a Sword and Shield uncut sheet. Have either of you seen anything like that?
I think Black and White Next Destinies, there's that like error sheet kind of thing that's out there. Gary has some. I've seen some in the Facebook groups. I think I have actually. I think it's like the XY era hollow style that I bought off eBay back during that era. It's like it's plain hollow only. There's no cards on it whatsoever. It's just a blank hollow. I'll need to double check that. Maybe it's not, but I want to say it's like the XY era hollow style. I could be wrong, but it's probably because they cracked down on it more. They more like again, the company Millennium Print Group. They are actively printing these things. Pokemon owns them now. I mean, it is theft. Theft that happened 20, 22 years ago from a company that no longer carries the IP. People just don't care as much about. WotC's not going to... WotC has more stuff on their hands with Hasbro and all that, the current Magic stuff. They're not going to go back and care about 22 years ago, this guy that worked for us stole some Pokemon sheets. And maybe, like, there's weird things that go on. I knew some higher ups at my company. There would be certain things that like, hey, this is supposed to go in the trash. I could use this at home. Someone who had a good relationship with them. Oh yeah, Bob, you can take that home. Somebody who doesn't have as good of a relationship might not be allowed to take them home. So that gets into the weird moral situation where like the broader company has a policy. You cannot take anything home, especially out of the dumpster. But some boss says to their person who works for them, oh yeah, you can take that home. That's still theft because the boss doesn't have the authority to like override the broader company policy. Like, so even though that some of those WotC employees, their boss probably watched them. Maybe they helped them carry a stack of sheets out to the car. Maybe they helped them carry a bucket of those 4-position only legendary collection packs out to their car. It was still theft, very, very likely. But just no one cares. No one really cares because it's so long ago. If it happens today, though, Rattle's going to make a video about it, about all the shreds turning up on YouTube, about this YouTuber opening packs of this other thing. And yeah, whatever. Super early. All that stuff is dramatic because it's like closer in proximity and time and stuff.
Yeah, I think you said it perfectly. I mean, you think about the old WotC employees, how close knit of a group that was, and you think about like the 4-position only packs that have been like released. Like, how much stuff do ex employees own? You know, we don't even know if those are more rare than modern uncut sheets. So who knows? I think it's something that there's been obviously speculation of WotC employees and having someone who liquidates a lot of their old product that they had. It was a quote unquote small company back then. So there could be a ton, there could be less than 50. We have no idea. But yeah, they're definitely treated differently for sure. I think because again, nostalgia, vintage versus modern. Vintage uncut sheets historically have been a lot more sought after, obviously for nostalgic reasons than modern sheets, would be. But yeah, I agree.
I think with that, we'll probably call it. I know there's a couple mostly semi-meme questions, I think, but we've run a little bit into overtime. If you guys see one that I'm missing that you want to grab, we can do it quick. But I think that's a decent point to call it a day. Thanks, Colt, for coming on. Yeah. Again, I'm going to link one last time in the chat your Instagram and your YouTube. And right when we wrap up, I will put it in the description. We really appreciate you coming on.
No, thank you guys so much, man. This has been like such a fun conversation. And I've been, like I said in the beginning, is like, been looking forward to this for a few weeks now. And yeah, if anybody... I mean, you guys have 1,005 subs according to Dan's counter right now, at least on YouTube. So thanks to the chat and everybody involved, subscribing to these guys. They're amazing. This is like one of the best Pokemon podcasts that are out there. So, happy that you guys finally reached the achievement and glad I got to be a part of it, like live. It's so great. So, but anyway, thank you guys for letting me come on. This has been so fun. always enjoyed talking to both of you guys. And yeah, this has been great. Chat, you guys were awesome. You guys were super active tonight. So thank you for all the questions, and thank you for all the even the meme questions and the funny comments. They're always entertaining for sure.
Yeah, it's been fun. Thanks for hanging out, everyone. Thanks, Peek, for coming on. And see you guys in 2 weeks.
We will catch you all later. And thanks for 1,000 subs. Thanks for the support.